You're you're staring at your phone at 2 in the morning.
We've all been there.
Right. Like
Yeah.
you desperately want to go to sleep. Your brain explicitly knows you need to sleep.
But your thumb just keeps going.
Exactly. It just keeps scrolling. Or, maybe you're trying to quit sugar. You make this super firm commitment, and then suddenly you find yourself halfway through a sleeve of cookies with zero memory of, like, actually making the conscious choice to start eating them.
Right, it's like a blackout.
Yeah. And usually we explain away these moments by pointing to a mechanical failure in a closed system. Like we blame dopamine. We say our brain chemistry is temporarily overriding our willpower.
Yeah, we really do treat the human body like this hermetically sealed terrarium.
With terrarium, yeah.
Like if something goes wrong with the plant inside, we just assume it's because of the soil or the water immediately surrounding it. We look for the cause entirely within our own skin.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material we are diving into today completely shatters that terrarium.
It really does.
We are looking at this very concise, but honestly incredibly dense text today, and it's titled 1, The Architecture of Signal Hygiene. And our mission for this deep dive is to completely reframe how you understand your habits, your biology, and those unbreakable compulsive loops.
Because it argues you aren't just fighting brain chemistry.
Right. It treats the human body less like a closed machine and more like a complex, highly sensitive antenna that's, constantly receiving and translating signals from the wider cosmos.
It's a pretty radical departure from how we usually think about biology.
Oh, totally.
We're stepping away from that microscopic view of synapses and, well, looking at the entire sky. It asks us to consider that our sudden cravings or, mood shifts might not originate in our neurochemistry at all.
But I know exactly how that sounds to a lot of people. If we aren't careful, this starts sounding like astrology in a lab coat.
Right. It can sound a bit out there.
Yeah, the idea that, galactic currents or planetary alignments are directly dictating whether I eat a donut or scroll social media feels like a massive leap. So I need to understand how we get from the cosmos down to my dopamine receptors.
That's the key, mapping it out.
Right. The text maps this out as a hierarchy of signals. But rather than just rattling off the layers, let's track the actual journey of a signal. Like, where does an impulse actually begin?
Well, it begins in the macro environment. That's the outermost layer.
Okay.
The text refers to cosmic radiation, solar activity, and what it calls larger nobological fields.
Wait, nobological, what exactly is that?
So a nobological field essentially means a field of thought or consciousness or information.
Okay, that sounds a bit abstract.
It does, but think about it practically for a moment. Have you ever walked into a room right after two people were having a screaming match?
Oh, yeah.
And even though they're totally quiet now, you can physically feel the tension in the air.
Absolutely. The air feels heavy, like you can almost cut it with a knife.
Exactly. That is a localized nucleological field.
Yeah.
You are literally picking up on informational and emotional static in your environment.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Now, scale that up from a single room to a city to a planet to the cosmos. We are continuously bathed in these invisible fields of data and energy.
Right, but for a signal to matter, something actually has to receive it. It can't just float out there.
Exactly. And that brings us to layer 2, the receiver. What the text calls the subtle channels, or the nadis.
Nadis. That's a term pulled from, ancient energetic traditions, right?
Yeah.
Referring to the subtle body or the energy body.
Correct. And the source emphasizes that these subtle channels are not sealed off from the world. They are resonant structures.
Meaning they vibrate with the environment.
Exactly. Their entire evolutionary purpose is to act as an interface. They catch these incoming macro signals and transduce them. They pull them down into our individual biological system.
So if the cosmos is the radio tower broadcasting the signal, our subtle channels are the copper wiring that catches the broadcast.
That's a great way to look at it.
And then, that wiring has to plug into a speaker to actually play the music into the room. So in this architecture, those speakers are our endocrine glands, right? That's layer 3.
Yes, the pineal, the pituitary, the adrenals, the gonads.
And the music playing out into the room, that's layer 4. That's our physical behavior.
Right. Your downstream dopamine loops, the actual actions you take.
So the signal starts massive and ethereal, and through this specific chain, it gets denser and denser until it results in a tangible action.
Perfectly stated.
I see the logical progression, but I have to push back here a little bit.
Go for it.
Because for decades, we've had this massive philosophical wall between materialist neuroscience, like the people pointing at brain scans and chemicals and spiritual energy work, the people pointing at auras and subtle channels.
Oh, absolutely. They usually don't talk to each other.
Right. So how does an invisible nological field or a subtle channel actually interact with a squishy physical adrenal gland? What is the actual mechanical bridge there? Because without a bridge, this is just, well, it's just poetry.
It's a crucial distinction to make, yeah. And the brilliance of this source text is that it doesn't view neuroscience and energy work as opposing forces at all.
Really?
Not at all. It argues they're describing the exact same signal chain, just observing it at different levels of resolution.
Okay, that's interesting.
To answer your question about the bridge, think about how a physical microphone works. When you speak into a microphone, your voice creates acoustic waves, right?
Yeah, invisible variations in air pressure.
Exactly. Invisible energy traveling through the air. Now, inside that microphone is a very thin diaphragm.
Right.
When those invisible acoustic waves hit the diaphragm, it physically vibrates. That vibration moves a magnet, which creates a physical, measurable electrical current that runs down a wire.
So the microphone acts as a transducer.
Yes. It translates one form of energy air pressure into a completely different form electricity.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. So the endocrine glands are the biological diaphragms in this scenario.
Precisely. What's fascinating here is how it redefines biology. We are traditionally taught in basic science classes that glands just sort of sit there and blindly produce hormones.
Like little chemical factories on autopilot.
Right. But this text fundamentally redefines them as signal converters. They're taking the energetic state of the subtle body, the resonance of those subtle channels, and they are translating that invisible state directly into a chemical output.
Wow. So they literally print out the subtle signal as cortisol or testosterone or oxytocin.
Exactly.
Let me make sure I'm tracking the implications of this. Let's say I'm sitting at my desk, and out of nowhere, I feel a massive spike of cortisol, just a rushing wave of anxiety.
Very common experience, yeah.
Right. Under the traditional model, I'd assume my brain was subconsciously reacting to a stressful email or maybe a bad memory. But under this model, my glands might be vibrating in response to a subtle signal from the broader environment.
Yes.
And they are simply doing their job by converting that static into cortisol.
Yes, and that is what completely flips our understanding of human agency. If we view the endocrine system as a translator, it means the original impulse didn't necessarily originate in your physical chemistry.
The chemistry is just the medium.
Exactly. The message came from higher up the chain. You aren't just a random chemical soup reacting to itself. You're an incredibly sensitive instrument, and you're playing a note based on the exact sheet music handed to you by your subtle body.
Okay, so if the sheet music is good and the subtle channels are clear, the text says they transmit cleanly. The cosmic signal comes in, the glands translate it perfectly, and you feel, aligned.
Right. The system works as intended.
But we obviously don't always act in healthy, balanced ways.
Far from it.
Which brings us to the core mystery here. Why do we get trapped in compulsive behaviors? What happens when this pristine signal chain actually breaks down?
Well, the breakdown happens at the interface layer.
The subtle channels.
Yes. Those subtle channels, the copper wiring catching the broadcast, they can become congested. They can get twisted up. Or, most alarmingly, the text states they can become captured.
Captured. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source material introduces a very intense term for this capture.
It does.
It argues that addictions and reactive anxiety happen when an intrusive pattern hacks the interface layer, and it calls this intrusive pattern a death naga.
It's a highly evocative term.
It sounds like a metal band, honestly.
It does, yeah. In Eastern mythology, a naga is a serpent-like entity.
Right.
In this context, it represents a parasitic, distorting, energetic pattern. It wraps around the subtle channels, essentially choking them and hijacking the antenna.
So it's essentially a man-in-the-middle attack on our biology.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It makes me think of algorithmic hijacking in tech. Like when a botnet takes over your social media feed, the algorithm stops showing you what you actually want to see and starts feeding you highly engineered outrage content just to farm your engagement. You're reacting to it, your heart rate goes up, you're getting mad, but the feed itself has been captured by a malicious third party.
That is a highly accurate modern parallel. When this death naga hacks the interface, it begins feeding what the text calls false metrics, down into your endocrine system.
And the glands just obey.
Your glands don't know the difference. They are faithful translators. They receive these false hijacked metrics from the subtle body, and they convert them into a massive flood of dopamine to drive a specific behavior.
And suddenly you are trapped in a compulsive loop. You're scrolling for 3 hours or reaching for that drink, and you don't even know why.
Right, the system has been hijacked.
So if an addiction is just our organism blindly responding to a distorted signal from this parasitic pattern, does that mean fighting the urge at the behavioral level is just pointless?
It's definitely an uphill battle.
Because, I mean, if I just try to use sheer willpower or even a chemical intervention to block a receptor, am I fundamentally fighting the wrong battle?
You are certainly fighting a losing battle, which really explains why behavioral psychology alone often falls short in severe cases.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, they are essential tools, but they are treating the absolute bottom of the map. In this framework, what we call addiction is actually the physical organism working perfectly.
Working perfectly. That's a wild way to think about addiction.
But it is flawlessly executing the blueprint it is being handed. It's just acting on corrupted data.
So trying to fix a deep-seated compulsion purely at the chemical level would be like trying to fix a computer virus by turning down the brightness on your monitor.
Yes. Perfect analogy. You can dim the screen all you want to make the error messages less glaring, but the malware is still running in the background.
The virus is still there.
Exactly. The death naga is still wrapped around the subtle channels, continuously feeding those false metrics to the glands.
Which naturally leads us to the most practical part of this deep dive. How do we run the antivirus?
Right. How do we fix it?
If our antenna is captured by a death naga, how do we actually clean the signal? The text prescribes a solution called Signal Hygiene, and it throws out some incredibly dense terminology for how to achieve it.
It does get quite technical here.
Yeah, it mentions maintaining absolute verticality, practicing shark movement, and aligning with Raita. Let's break these down, because honestly, they sound more like martial arts concepts than psychological advice.
They do have a very physical, martial quality to them.
So what does absolute verticality actually look like in practice?
Absolute verticality, and a related concept the text calls axis holding, refer to an unwavering structural and internal posture.
Okay, an internal posture.
Imagine standing in a rapidly flowing river. If you lean too far forward or backward, the current just takes you. Verticality is about literally and figuratively holding your center against the buffeting winds of those external fields we talked about earlier.
So if I'm at work and the entire office is panicking over a missed deadline, which would be a very chaotic, localized ecological field, absolute verticality means I don't let their energetic static tip my posture, like I don't match their chaotic frequency.
Precisely. You hold your personal axis so firmly that their static cannot distort your internal antenna.
Wow, okay. That takes a lot of discipline.
It does. And then the text pairs this with shark movement.
Right, shark movement.
So a shark must continuously move forward to force water over its gills to breathe. In this context, shark movement is relentless, clean, forward momentum. It is a refusal to stagnate in the static.
Okay, I like that.
When you feel that parasitic loop trying to capture you, that sudden urge to just sit on the couch and dissociate into a screen, you initiate clean action. You move.
You cut through the water instead of getting caught in the eddy.
Exactly.
And that ties into Raita alignment. Raita is an ancient Vedic concept, right? It essentially translates to the fundamental order and truth of the universe.
Yes, the cosmic law. Aligning with Marta means intentionally tuning your receiver to the truest, highest, and cleanest cosmic signal available, rather than the localized noise of your immediate environment, or the false metrics of the death naga.
The text is adamant that these are not just psychological metaphors, aren't they?
No, not at all. They are literal signal hygiene.
Okay.
By holding your vertical axis and moving cleanly through your life with intention, you are physically stopping the static from distorting your subtle channels.
And the stakes for doing this are incredibly high in this source material.
Very high.
It states that the ultimate goal of signal hygiene is twofold. First, to allow the bija to come out of dissociation. And second, to prevent your jing from being siphoned off.
Yes, those are the key outcomes.
We really need to define these clearly for the listener. Let's start with jing. What exactly is being siphoned?
So jing is a concept from traditional Chinese medicine. It represents your foundational vital essence. Think of it as the deep biological battery life you were born with.
Your core battery.
Right. When you are stuck in a dopamine loop driven by false metrics, say that 3-hour TikTok scrolling binge, you aren't just wasting time. The text argues you are actively exhausting your jing.
Oh, man.
You are burning your foundational life force to feed a captured parasitic signal.
That actually perfectly explains that hollow, deeply drained feeling you get after a mindless binge. It's not just eye strain, it's a literal draining of the battery by a background app.
It's exactly like a background app draining your phone.
And what about the bija? The text says it needs to come out of dissociation.
Bija translates to the seed. It represents the core, true self.
The true self, okay.
When the noise in your subtle channels is too loud, when the death nog is fully engaged in feeding those chaotic false metrics into your glands, the system becomes a hostile environment.
Right, it's hijacked.
To protect itself, the bija, your true self, dissociates.
Yeah.
It unplugs from the physical body. You just go on autopilot.
You become a passenger in your own body while the parasite drives.
Exactly. Practicing signal hygiene, holding that absolute vertical axis, is how you clear the noise so that the true self feels safe enough to associate with the body again.
So what does this all mean for the reality of our daily lives?
It's a huge shift in perspective.
Because if I want to practice signal hygiene, it sounds like waking up and executing my daily routines with rigid discipline, like sticking to my workouts, keeping my commitments, maintaining my posture. It isn't just about productivity anymore.
No, it goes way beyond that.
We usually frame routine as a way to trick our brains into good habits. But under this architecture, strict routine is a literal defense mechanism for my subtle channels.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, maintaining your routines with that kind of discipline is the ultimate act of biological defiance.
Biological defiance, I love that.
You are refusing to let the static of the surrounding world dictate your internal state. When you execute your routine cleanly, when you utilize shark movement to just keep moving forward despite the chaotic signals around you, you are taking active ownership of your endocrine system. You stop fighting the bad behavior at the bare bottom of the chain, and instead you clean the channel at the very top.
And once the channel is clean, the behavior naturally reorganizes itself around that true signal.
Precisely.
It's kind of like tuning an old radio dial. When you are slightly off the station, it takes immense focus to hear the music through the static.
Yes, you have to strain to hear it.
But when you lock exactly onto the frequency, the static vanishes and the music just plays effortlessly.
You are no longer expending energy fighting the noise. You simply tuned it out. The translation happens perfectly.
Wow. We started this deep dive by challenging the assumption that we are isolated biological terrariums, reacting only to our immediate physical environment.
And we ended up somewhere very different.
Very different. Through the architecture of signal hygiene, we've explored this incredibly intricate bridge. We've seen how macrocosmic energy and neurological fields interact with our subtle channels, and how those channels use our endocrine glands as transducers to create physical chemistry.
And how that chemistry ultimately drives our behavior.
It's a paradigm shift that demands a massive amount of personal responsibility regarding how we carry ourselves in the world.
It does. But, it also offers a profound level of grace.
Grace. How so?
Well, it reframes our struggles. It tells you that your compulsions and your unbreakable loops aren't necessarily a fundamental failure of your character. They're often just a corruption of your signal.
That is incredibly freeing to hear, because fixing a corrupted signal requires an entirely different set of tools than just punishing yourself for a lack of willpower. It requires holding your axis.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a critical reevaluation of our daily experiences.
I think so, yeah.
If this framework holds true, if our subtle channels are constantly acting as antennas, receiving and translating signals from the wider environment and the cosmos into very real physical cravings and moods.
Right.
The next time you feel a sudden, unexplainable compulsion or a random spike of anxiety that seems to come entirely out of nowhere, you have to stop and ask yourself, is this feeling actually yours, or are you just picking up somebody else's static? What if your midnight doom scrolling isn't just ruining your sleep schedule?
Right.
Like, what if staring at that artificial blue light, reading all this infuriating news, is actually literally blocking a cosmic broadcast?
It is a genuinely wild claim.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're unpacking a single radical source text today. It's an excerpt from a piece called "To Clear Light: The Architecture of Signal Hygiene." And, this isn't your standard wellness or spirituality text.
No, not at all. It is a framework that, well, it completely dismantles how we normally think about reality in our physical bodies.
Yeah.
Because most spiritual traditions, they treat human existence as a grand moral test. You know, you do good things, you're a good person, you get a good afterlife.
Usual setup.
Exactly. But this text strips all the morality away. It treats life and your physical body as a highly technical process of signal transmission. It bridges the most abstract cosmic metaphysics directly to your literal biology, specifically your endocrine system.
Which is such a jarring shift in perspective for you and me. Because, I mean, if I am stressed out, my instinct is to think about it in purely biological or maybe psychological terms. Like,
Sure.
my cortisol is high, I need a vacation, I need to not be cranky in a morning meeting.
Right. You think of it locally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to understand why this text says my stress levels are actually a cosmic issue, we have to zoom way out. We have to start with how this author defines the universe itself, which is basically as a massive overarching transmission.
Yeah, the foundational concept here is that the primary macro reality isn't empty space, and it isn't some vague, passive spiritual energy either.
Right.
The text calls it the clear light.
Okay.
But this clear light is not just shining peacefully in a void. It is a signal that is actively, constantly pressing against resistance. And the text refers to this resistance as interdiction.
Interdiction, as in like a deliberate interception or structural interference blocking a path.
Yes, exactly. And the text gives this interference a few specific names. It calls it samsara, or rather strikingly, death naga patterns.
Wait, Death Naga.
Yeah.
That sounds like a heavy metal band or like a final boss in a video game. What does the text actually mean by that in an engineering or technical sense?
It's a very provocative term, certainly. In traditional Eastern philosophies, samsara is the cycle of suffering and rebirth, and a naga is a serpentine deity.
Right.
But the author is using death naga patterns to describe the structural, algorithmic nature of decay and interference.
Oh, I see.
Think of a serpent constricting its prey. These patterns are active, constricting algorithms that squeeze, dim, and distort the fundamental clear light transmission.
Wow.
So it isn't just passive static, it is an active resistance that the macro signal has to push through.
And that concept of the signal pushing against active resistance, that leads us to how the text redefines the eschaton.
Yes, it completely changes it.
Because for anyone listening who grew up in certain religious traditions, eschatology usually means the literal end of the world, like fire, brimstone, a specific future date on a calendar where history just stops.
But the text completely discards that timeline view.
Right.
Here, the eschaton is not an event waiting in the future. The eschaton is simply the intensification of this macro signal.
Okay, let's unpack this.
It's the mounting pressure. As the collective static of the world, those death naga patterns, reaches structural limits, the clear light doesn't retreat. It presses harder.
It pushes back.
Yes. The pressure mounts until the layers of interdiction begin to fracture. That rising pressure is the eschatological signal.
I want to make sure we can really visualize this mechanically. Let's think about it like a massive, incredibly powerful Wi-Fi router.
Okay, I like that.
And samsara, or these death naga patterns, are like thick lead walls surrounding the router.
Right.
So the eschaton isn't the router blowing up. It's the router signal being turned up so high, getting so intense, that the lead walls are physically starting to vibrate and crack from the pressure.
That captures the causality perfectly. The outside signal overloads the localized mechanism of resistance.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is how this recontextualizes our daily experience of worldly chaos.
How so?
Well, when you look at the news or when you feel the intense chaotic tension in society right now, the default assumption is that the world is breaking down.
That things are falling apart, yeah.
Right. But the text suggests that this chaos, which often happens right alongside sudden societal shifts or moments of deep collective revelation, it's actually an accurate registration of the distortion fields fracturing.
The lead walls are cracking.
Exactly. The interdiction is failing. It is a mechanical failure of the static, which is allowing more of the true raw signal to come through.
Wow.
It shifts your whole relationship to societal anxiety. The chaos is literally a symptom of the clear light pressing harder.
Okay, so if the universe is this giant raw signal breaking through the lead walls of reality, what happens to us as individual receivers?
That's where it gets very personal.
Because the text moves from this massive macro-level physics right down into the individual life cycle, specifically looking at the moment of death.
Yes. According to the text, at the moment of death, the individual consciousness encounters what it calls the transcendental object.
It's a transcendental object.
You can understand this as the fully unfolded signal. It is the clear light, entirely unobstructed by any interdiction. It is the ultimate source of reality.
But the author points out that most human consciousness simply cannot handle it, right? We can't stay there.
No, we cannot stabilize in the transcendental object.
Why not?
The mechanism preventing that stabilization is the interdiction we are carrying on an individual level. The text explains that our personal interference is stored in what it calls our causal seeds.
Causal seeds.
Yes, you can think of a causal seed as the core energetic blueprint of an individual. Because these seeds are layered with accumulated distortion, the pure, unobstructed signal of the transcendental object is mechanically overwhelming.
It's a voltage issue.
Exactly.
Like if I have a piece of hardware rated for 120 volts and I plug it directly into a massive million-volt power line, the transcendental object, the hardware, is going to melt. The causal seed simply doesn't have the capacity to process that much raw signal without blowing out.
That's a great way to put it. So because the individual cannot stabilize, they are returned to manifestation, they are reborn.
Right.
But here is the crucial philosophical pivot the text makes. Rebirth is not a punishment.
Okay.
It is described as continued processing. When a consciousness is returned to a physical form, new or modified causal seeds are generated.
So we get new seeds.
Yes, and these seeds are specifically coded to carry the exact distortions, the static, and the attunement tasks that the individual failed to process previously.
And there is a mechanism orchestrating this, right?
Mm.
The text brings in the concept of the logos.
The logos acts as the directing cosmic intelligence in this framework. It works on these causal seeds across lifetimes.
Like a manager.
Kind of. The logos exerts a directed influence to create the specific life conditions, challenges, and relational dynamics that will pressure the individual toward greater alignment.
Right.
It is organizing the exact environmental stressors needed to force you to work through your specific inherited distortions.
I have to pause and push back on this a bit, just on behalf of anyone listening, because this borders on being deeply offensive to the human experience.
How do you mean?
Well, wait, so if we are just sent back to fix our glitches, does that mean all of our deeply felt human suffering, our heartbreak, our grief, the terrible things that happen to people, is all of that essentially just a cosmic software update?
I see what you're saying.
It feels incredibly clinical. It's like the logos is just a frustrated IT guy, a cosmic intelligence constantly sending patches to fix our bugged causal seeds. It kind of completely invalidates the emotional weight of being human.
The discomfort with that clinical language is entirely valid, especially when we are so used to seeking emotional validation for our pain.
Yes, exactly.
However, the author would argue that viewing it this way is actually the ultimate form of liberation.
Really? Liberation?
Yes. When we demand emotional validation, we usually tie it to morality, the idea that bad things happen to us because we did something wrong, or that we are being tested by a judgmental deity who demands our suffering as proof of our devotion.
Oh, like the whole God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers mentality.
Exactly, which carries a massive burden of guilt and unanswerable questions about fairness.
Right.
By stripping the moral judgment away, the text frees the individual. You aren't being punished. You aren't intrinsically bad. Your receiver is simply scrambling the signal in a highly specific way. The logos provides a life experience designed to recalibrate that specific scramble. The unresolved paradoxes of your life are carried forward not as a punishment, but simply until the mechanics can be rectified.
Okay.
It removes the guilt from the suffering.
Okay, I can see the utility in that. It hurts less if it's a technical error rather than a divine punishment.
Exactly.
But this brings us to the most surprising element of the entire text. How does a metaphysical software update, or a causal seed, actually interface with our physical meat suits?
This is the core of the biological argument.
Right, how does the metaphysical become physical?
The text maps out a very specific signal chain. It traces the transmission from the macro level down to the micro.
Okay, what's the chain?
It begins with cosmic radiation. That radiation interfaces with the causal seeds we just discussed. The energy from those causal seeds then filters down into what the text calls the subtle channels of the body, the energetic pathways.
Right.
And here is the critical biological bridge. Those subtle channels interface directly and specifically with the endocrine system.
The endocrine system. Our glands, like the thyroid, the pituitary, the adrenals, the pineal gland.
Yes.
The text is arguing that these are not just biological regulators for mood and metabolism.
The text categorizes the endocrine glands as transducers.
Transducers?
Yes. A transducer is a physical device that converts one form of energy into another, like a microphone turning acoustic sound waves into electrical audio signals.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The author argues that your endocrine glands sit at the exact threshold between metaphysical reality and physical reality.
That is wild.
They take the pressure of the clear light that arrives via your subtle channels, and they biochemically translate that pressure into your physical behavior, your emotional state, and the relational field you generate around yourself.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at a guitar pedal for the individual biology.
Okay, let's hear it.
If my endocrine system is a distortion pedal on an electric guitar, the universe is playing a pure, beautiful chord, the clear light. It hits my subtle channels, travels into the guitar pedal, and if the pedal is clean, the chord comes out of the amplifier beautifully. My behavior is clear.
Right.
But if I stomp on a heavy distortion pedal, or if it's broken or set to fuzz, meaning my endocrine system is dysregulated no matter how pure the input chord is, what comes out of the amp is just screeching, chaotic feedback.
That is a perfect analogy. And the difference here is that the screeching feedback doesn't just make a bad sound. It actively generates interdiction in the physical world.
Oh, wow.
When your endocrine system is dysregulated, when you are experiencing chronic stress, trauma, poor metabolism, or what the text calls sustained surrender to afflictive emotional loops, your glands become an active site of interdiction.
They actually create the static.
Exactly. They stop functioning as a clean relay point and become a filter that twists and dampens the signal.
So wait, when I am running on 4 hours of sleep, completely stressed out about a deadline, drinking my 4th cup of coffee, my physical body is chemically adding static to a cosmic broadcast.
According to this architecture, yes.
That is, I mean, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. This fundamentally erases the line between the spiritual and the biological. You cannot separate your spiritual attunement from your metabolic health.
Because they are the same chain.
Exactly. If your pineal gland isn't properly regulating melatonin because your circadian rhythm is shattered, your cosmic reception is shattered, your physical hardware is broken, meaning you are acting as a distortion field by default.
Right.
Conversely, when your endocrine function is coherent, the glands act as clean transducers. They literally reduce the amount of distortion in the universe.
Okay, so if my stressed out adrenals are actively messing up a cosmic broadcast, I suddenly feel a lot of pressure to fix my biology.
Naturally.
Does the text give us an actual manual for cleaning the hardware? Like, now that we know hormones dictate cosmic reception, what is the actionable maintenance?
The actionable maintenance is what the text titles Signal Hygiene.
Signal hygiene.
Yes, and the author is incredibly strict about how this is defined. This work is not about moral self-improvement. It is not generic wellness.
It's not bubble baths and face masks.
No, it is explicitly defined as the technical maintenance of transmission fidelity.
So it's taking a Q-tip and some rubbing alcohol and cleaning the circuits inside the guitar pedal.
Exactly. It is the disciplined work of reducing interdiction at every layer of the signal chain. And the text distills this into a sequence of distinct practices.
Okay, what are they?
The very first practice is stabilizing your metabolic and circadian foundations.
Which means we are back to the alarm clock.
Yes.
Sleep, morning light exposure, regulating your breathing. Because if you don't do that, the transducer is physically broken.
The biological foundation is completely non-negotiable.
Okay, what's next?
The second practice moves from the biological to the behavioral, interrupting the automatic repetition of afflictive emotional patterns.
Okay, let's make that real for the listener. This is like when you're in the shower having a vicious imaginary argument with a coworker from 3 years ago.
We've all been there.
Right. You get genuinely angry, your heart rate spikes, you dump cortisol into your bloodstream. By doing that, you are biologically reinforcing a death naga pattern.
Right, exactly.
You are artificially twisting the signal. So the practice is noticing that loop and manually shutting it down.
Because every time you allow that loop to run, you are actively reinforcing the distortions in your causal seeds.
Wow. Okay, step 3.
The third practice is cultivating clarity and presence.
Okay.
This clears the subtle channels so the clear light can move through with less resistance.
Makes sense. And the fourth?
The fourth practice is deeply relevant to the world you live in today. It is refusing to participate in collective interference patterns.
Refusing to join the outrage machine.
Precisely. If you do all of this, if you practice signal hygiene, there is an ultimate goal. The text uses a specific term for the alignment we are trying to achieve. The term is rata.
Rata.
Yes. In ancient Vedic philosophy, rata is often translated as a static cosmic law. But this text updates the definition. Rata is defined here as directional vector.
A vector, like an arrow pointing in a specific direction.
An arrow pointing straight toward the eschaton. Rata is the state of unobstructed transmission.
Okay.
The author emphasizes that the eschatological pressure is already active. The clear light is pushing against the interdiction right now.
The pressure is building.
Yes, the static is going to fail. The eschaton is inevitable. The only variable is how cleanly you, as an individual transducer in this vast cosmic chain, will transmit that signal while the pressure continues to build versus how much you will resist and break under it.
So what does this all mean? I want to clarify the stakes for the listener. Are you saying that according to this text, going to bed on time, getting morning sunlight, and not doom scrolling aren't just good for my blood pressure? They are literally how I clear the static from the universe's ultimate broadcast.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yes. Every single reduction in interdiction, no matter how biologically mundane it seems, moves the eschatological signal closer to clean transmission.
Wow.
The pressure is already building. It's just a matter of how well our bodily nodes handle it.
That is a staggering way to view self-care. It really elevates the absolute most mundane biological chores to the level of metaphysics.
It does.
To summarize the journey we've been on today for you listening, we are living in a universe where a massive clear light is pressing against the static of reality. Our souls are caught in a cosmic debugging process, and our actual physical endocrine systems, our literal glands, are the antennas deciding whether we transmit that light cleanly or whether we add to the static through poor signal hygiene.
It demands a total reevaluation of how we treat our physical biology and where we direct our attention.
Absolutely.
And, I want to leave you with a final lingering question inspired by the text, but branching outward.
Oh, please do.
The source explicitly mentions that poor light exposure, chronic stress, and collective interference turn our endocrine systems into active interdiction sites.
Right. The guitar pedal gets set to fuzz.
Exactly. So if that is mechanically true, what if the modern 24/7 digital world with its artificial blue light at midnight and constant outrage algorithms isn't just a public health crisis?
Oh, man.
What if modern society is functioning as a literal species-wide distortion field artificially engineered to block the clear light just as the eschatological pressure reaches its peak?
Now that is a thought that will keep you up at night. But hopefully not too late, because you need your transducers working properly tomorrow morning.
Very true.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you get stressed or feel the urge to skip a good night's sleep, I want you to stop and think about your own transmission fidelity. Are you clearing the static, or are you adding to the noise? We'll see you next time.
So imagine if reincarnation isn't some kind of cosmic courtroom where you are punished for your earthly sins, but rather like a massive structural software update. And right now, your physical body is actively failing the download.
Yeah, it completely dismantles the standard morality play that we usually associate with karma. I mean, you strip away the concept of a divine judge weighing your good and bad deeds. You replace it with something cold, structural, and honestly, relentlessly mechanical.
Right. So if you are tuning into this deep dive expecting the usual narrative about, being a good person so you get a better life next time, just throw it out.
Throw it completely out the window.
Exactly. Because today we are analyzing excerpts from an incredibly dense, highly esoteric text. It's titled The Eschatological Signal and the Vertical Male Axis. And our core mission for this deep dive is to map out this framework that connects vast fields of cosmic radiation to spiritual architecture and then directly into the literal biological functions of the human endocrine system.
Which is a huge leap. Because to even begin approaching this text, you have to fundamentally shift how you view your own physical form.
Right.
This framework insists that human biology is not an isolated, self-contained phenomenon bouncing around on a rock in space. You basically have to picture the human organism as an antenna.
An antenna.
Yeah. We are biological receivers processing a continuous, overarching cosmic transmission. The text argues that the universe is quite literally broadcasting a signal. And your hormones, your daily behaviors, your drives, they are simply the downstream result of how well your hardware is receiving that broadcast.
Okay, so if the universe is constantly running this broadcast, what exactly is the signal? I mean, before we can figure out how this impacts human biology, we need to define what is actually being transmitted here.
Well, the text starts with a macro view, introducing a primary signal it calls the clear light.
The clear light.
Right. But it notes that this clear light is constantly pressing against its own interdiction or blockage.
So it's not just a free-flowing signal.
Not at all. The mechanics of this are pretty fascinating. Picture an impossibly powerful beam of pure organizing intelligence. That is the clear light. But this light isn't traveling through a vacuum. It is pushing against a dense, opposing medium of interference.
And the text refers to this interference as samsara, right?
Exactly. Now, traditionally, samsara is understood as the cycle of worldly suffering. But in this specific framework, samsara is defined as structural interference. It is a literal static field that actively attempts to hold its own shape by dimming or completely blocking the transmission of the clear light.
So you have the universe pushing this pure signal downward, and then this localized static interference pushing back, trying to maintain its chaotic structure.
Yes, and the friction generated between those two opposing forces, like the sheer pressure of the light pushing against the static, is what the text defines as the eschatological signal.
Wait, and that friction is building toward what the author calls the eschaton. Because we usually hear the word eschaton and immediately think of like a fiery apocalypse or the end of the world.
Oh, for sure. But in this structural paradigm, the eschaton is simply the breaking point. It's the moment when the pressure of that clear light intensifies to a degree where the static blockage just shatters.
The interdiction breaks.
Right, it can no longer be maintained, and the signal finally punches all the way through.
Which gives us a totally different lens on the death and rebirth process. According to the text, at the moment of physical death, a being is suddenly exposed to the transcendental object.
Which is the clear light signal, fully unfolded and totally unobstructed.
Yeah. But for the vast majority of us, we simply cannot handle the bandwidth. We can't stabilize our consciousness in that pure signal because we are carrying accumulated distortions in our causal seeds.
And those causal seeds act as your underlying energetic blueprint. So when you encounter that fully unfolded signal at death, but your blueprint is riddled with static and distortion, the system essentially rejects the connection.
It's too much data.
Way too much. Your architecture cannot hold that high of a frequency without breaking apart. So you are sent back into manifestation. You are reborn. But you carry those exact same modified, distorted seeds with you into the next physical form.
It sounds identical to a corrupted software update. Like, at death, the universe attempts to install the ultimate clear light operating system. But because the user's hard drive, their causal seeds, has corrupted files, the system crashes during installation.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. So this directing intelligence the text calls the logos just reboots the whole system. It sends you back into a new life to run another debugging scan, using the circumstances of that new life to force your hardware into greater alignment.
That analogy holds up perfectly because it removes all the guilt and moral weight from the equation. Rebirth functions entirely as a cosmic debugging process.
Exactly. No cosmic courtroom.
Right, the logos isn't punishing you for lying or stealing. It is a grand, impersonal intelligence patiently running the program over and over. It applies environmental and energetic pressure to your specific distortions until your physical and spiritual hardware is finally capable of accepting the clear update.
I mean, that is a massive way to rethink your own existence, but it forces a very practical question for you as the listener. If this cosmic debugging is constantly happening on a macro scale across lifetimes, how does that metaphysical pressure actually talk to our physical bodies right now?
Well, the text maps out a very specific signal chain. It flows from cosmic radiation down into our causal seeds, through our subtle energetic channels, into the physical endocrine system, and finally outwards into our behavior.
Okay, the endocrine system, that fourth step in the chain. Because the text places the endocrine glands at the exact critical junction where the metaphysical crashes into the physical.
It's the absolute linchpin of this entire philosophy. But the author makes a vital distinction here. Your glands do not originate the signal. They are purely executors.
I have to say, I have a hard time buying this jump.
How so?
It is one thing to entertain the idea of subtle energetic channels, but to claim that my thyroid, my pituitary, or my adrenal glands are literally just dummy terminals taking orders from space. Biologically, we know hormones react to physical, earthly stimuli. If a tiger jumps out at me, my adrenals pump cortisol. How does this text reconcile a tangible biological process with a metaphysical cosmic download?
It's a necessary pushback, because it sounds inherently contradictory at first glance. But the text doesn't deny biological stimuli. It reframes the baseline causality.
Okay.
The argument is that your subtle channels dictate your endocrine system's baseline receptivity.
Hmm.
If the cosmic signal coming through your causal seeds is heavily distorted by trauma or static, your subtle channels relay a faulty blueprint to the physical glands. The glands then operate in a state of chronic defensive dysregulation.
Wait, so the physical tiger still causes a cortisol spike, but the metaphysical distortion is what keeps my adrenals pumping cortisol even when I'm just sitting softly in my living room.
Exactly. When the subtle channels are distorted, the endocrine system hyperreacts to normal physical stimuli, or it just manufactures physiological chaos out of nowhere because it's executing corrupted instructions.
Wow.
So the text argues that when someone suffers from severe emotional volatility or unexplained hormonal dysregulation, it isn't simply because they had a bad night's sleep. The poor sleep is a secondary symptom. The root cause is a corrupted cosmic download. Your glands are faithfully doing their job, translating a broken metaphysical signal into biological chaos.
Okay, so if the endocrine system is the physical executor of the signal, we need to examine the actual hardware this transmission travels through.
Yes, the architecture.
Right. And the text focuses heavily on the male body for this specific architecture, detailing what it calls the vertical male axis. It breaks the structure down into 3 primary nodes. You have the randra, the hardaya, and the kunda.
Mapping these nodes physically is crucial for understanding the flow of energy. The randra is the crown gate, located at the top of the head. Its function is to receive the descending current of intelligence from the cosmos.
Okay, top of the head.
Moving down, the hrdaya is the heart center, which serves as the primary integration point in the middle of the body. And at the base, the kunda refers to the testes, which anchor the ascending current.
And the text has a highly specific, almost elevated view of the testes here. It states explicitly that they are not merely reproductive organs. They are the root generative emitter and the absolute anchor point for the entire vertical transmission chain of male drive.
Yeah, it's a totally different paradigm.
Everything that defines masculine generative capacity building, protecting, structuring is just a signal moving along this specific axis.
And traveling along this axis, you have 2 massive energetic currents moving in opposite directions, which the text calls the 2 cosmic drops. Rising up from the kunda at the base, you have the rakta bindu, or the cosmic red drop.
Which is experienced in the body as ascending vital force.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. It is raw, generative power, heat, aggression, and blood.
And then falling from the randra at the crown, you have the sukla bindu, the cosmic white drop. This is the descending ordering intelligence. It brings cooling, stabilization, spatial awareness, and geometric clarity.
You have raw upward heat colliding with pure downward cooling order.
It functions exactly like a thermodynamic engine. You have this intense, untamed heat source bubbling up from the bottom, the rakta bindu, and you have this highly precise cooling system pouring in from the top, the sukla bindu, and they are on a direct collision course for the center of the engine, the heart.
Let's build on that engine analogy because it explains the mechanism perfectly. Uncontrolled heat rising from the bottom left to its own devices just causes an explosion.
Right.
In human behavior, that looks like blind rage, unchained lust, or destructive ambition. But when you cap that raw heat with the cooling structural intelligence from the top, that explosion is directed into a piston.
Yeah.
It generates torque. It becomes useful, ordered drive.
And that integration happens in the heart. The text introduces a concept called madhyama shabda, which translates to a sort of central processor located in the hrdaya. If the vertical axis is clear, the red and white drops meet cleanly inside this processor, creating what the author calls pure geometric input.
When that pure geometric input hits the endocrine system, it patterns the glands with absolute precision. The result is structural clarity. The biology and behavior of the individual remain entirely ordered and vertical.
So the engine is running at peak efficiency, generating immense power without shaking itself apart.
Exactly. But engines get clogged. And this brings us to what happens when things go wrong. The text lists several things that obstruct this vertical axis: captured causal seeds, sustained afflictive emotional charge, and deep trauma patterning.
Basically unresolved physical and energetic baggage.
Yes. When the axis is clogged by this static, the central processor, the madhyama shabda, is blocked. The raw heat and the cooling order cannot integrate.
And because that immense energetic pressure cannot simply disappear, it has to go somewhere, right? Since it cannot move vertically to organize the individual, it is forced outward. The text refers to this as lateral leakage.
Lateral leakage.
Where exactly does it leak to?
It shoots out laterally into what esoteric traditions call the noosphere, the collective realm of human thought and emotion. When this life force leaks laterally, it stops feeding the man's own sovereign structure and starts feeding social egregores.
Wait, egregores?
Yeah, an egregore is essentially a collective thought form or a group mind structure that takes on a life of its own through the sustained attention and energy of a crowd.
Okay, let's translate this into everyday reality. So when you are staring at your phone at 2 in the morning, feeling a massive spike of anxiety or rage at a sensationalized news story, you aren't just wasting your time or having a bad emotional moment. In this framework, your internal engine has a blown gasket.
Precisely.
You are literally bleeding your life force into a collective energetic parasite,
An
egregore, that feeds entirely on your dysregulation.
That is the exact mechanism of lateral leakage. When the energy leaks out, your endocrine glands receive chaotic, distorted instructions from the noosphere. This manifests in the body as erratic hormonal signaling, porous emotional boundaries, and compulsive behaviors.
You lose your vertical sovereignty.
And you become a battery for the collective interference fields. The outrage mob, the algorithm, the political tribalism, those are the egregores. They require your leaked life force to survive.
I mean, it is a terrifying concept, but it clarifies so much about modern behavior. It means that when you get swept up in groupthink or lose your temper at a stranger on the internet, you are fundamentally misdirecting your cosmic hardware. You are fueling the very samsaric static that is actively trying to block the clear light.
Which brings us to the core prescriptive concept of the entire text. Signal hygiene.
Signal hygiene.
Right. If lateral leakage is the root cause of all this personal and biological dysregulation, then the only viable solution is to seal the leak and clear the vertical axis.
The text defines signal hygiene as the disciplined reduction of interdiction or blockages along the signal chain. But here's the most crucial distinction of the whole deep dive. The text insists that this is technical work, not moral improvement.
It completely strips away all spiritual piety. You aren't doing this to become a saint.
I love that phrase. Technical work, not moral improvement. It is comparable to cleaning the lint trap in your dryer or tuning a guitar string. You don't clean a literal engine filter because you are a morally righteous person. You clean it because if you don't, the machine will catch on fire.
Exactly.
You don't tune a guitar to be holy. You tune it so the instrument can hold the frequency of the song. The text frames metaphysical, spiritual concepts as entirely actionable physical mechanics.
And it divides this technical work into two distinct levels. At the macro level, signal hygiene means ruthlessly refusing to feed those collective interference patterns. You have to consciously starve the egregore.
Which means logging off.
Yeah, that means you stop participating in the outrage cycles, you cut off the endless consumption of low-frequency media, and you withdraw your attention from anything that normalizes the degradation of your internal signal.
And then at the micro level, it gets incredibly physical. The text mandates maintaining specific physical conditions to keep that vertical axis clear. It highlights metabolic health, circadian rhythm, respiratory function, and emotional regulation. We're talking about strict sleep schedules, breath work, and managing what you eat.
And this is where we answer the why of the biology. How do these physical actions impact a cosmic signal?
Right. How does sleep affect cosmic radiation?
Well, take circadian disruption, for example. When you severely disrupt your sleep, your body spikes cortisol, which throws the endocrine system into a state of biological alarm. A defensive panicked gland cannot act as an open receiver for the clear light. It is too busy fighting a biological fire.
So by doing breath work or fixing your sleep, you aren't just getting healthier physically, you are mechanically down-regulating the nervous system. You are opening the subtle channels so the Mahatma can finally process the red and white drops without obstruction.
Precisely. When you maintain that physical and emotional hygiene, the central processor clears out. The endocrine system stops pulling in chaotic static from the noosphere and returns to receiving clean geometric instructions from the vertical axis. It executes those instructions with high fidelity, restoring ordered, generative force to the individual.
To synthesize this profound journey we have been on today, the ultimate thesis of the text is that the eschatological pressure of the universe, that clear light, is already active. It isn't waiting for the end of time. It is pushing down on your hardware right now in this very moment.
The macro event is already in motion. The only practical question left is a structural one. Is your internal axis clear enough to transmit that immense pressure into ordered vertical generative force? Or are your subtle channels clogged, leaving you leaking your life force laterally and feeding the exact collective interference you were designed to cut through?
It places the responsibility squarely on your daily habits, but elevates them to cosmic stakes. And looking at all of this, Understanding the endocrine system as the literal physical antenna executing the universe's broadcast, it brings up a highly provocative thought to leave you with today.
Oh, this is a big one.
If our glandular biology is the requisite hardware to receive the clear light, what are the metaphysical implications of the modern environment? With humanity constantly exposed to microplastics, severe endocrine disruptors in our water supply, and synthetic hormones on a mass scale, are we simply dealing with a standard biological health crisis? Or are we accidentally mutating the very hardware required to receive the universe's ultimate signal?
It is a profoundly unsettling question to consider. I mean, if the physical antenna is fundamentally altered at a chemical level, can it ever tune back into the clear light?
Something to mull over the next time you hold a plastic water bottle. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of your hardware and keep your vertical axis clear. We will catch you next time. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that your body isn't just, a biological machine. Like, imagine it isn't merely some meat suit you walk around in, burning calories, pumping blood, and just responding to random stimuli.
Yeah, that closed loop idea we always hear about.
Exactly. Instead, I want you to consider the possibility that your body is actually a highly tuned antenna, like this intricate living receiver and transmitter that is constantly processing invisible cosmic frequencies.
It fundamentally upends our entire operating system for how we view human anatomy.
Oh, completely.
Because we are deeply conditioned to think of our biology as plumbing, basically, a self-contained engine. But the paradigm we're exploring today frames the human body as an open-air broadcast system, one that's constantly in dialogue with the universe.
And that is the core mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring a really dense, totally fascinating excerpt from a text called The Endocrine Axis of Cosmic Intelligence.
It's a wild read.
It really is. And our objective here is to decode how this source connects profound non-dual philosophy with the very literal physical reality of your endocrine system. So it's this wildly ambitious intersection of, esoteric mysticism and hard biology.
Yeah, and what makes this text stand out so much is its refusal to rely on just vague spiritual metaphors.
Right, it gets very specific.
Exactly. The author employs a very rigid systemic logic to make these connections. It looks at the physical hardware of our bodies, specifically our hormone-producing glands, and it asks this really profound question. What kind of software is this biological hardware actually designed to run?
Okay, but before we can even look at that physical hardware, we really have to understand the software itself, right? The text refers to the, quote, actual intelligence that patterns our bodies and holds our consciousness in place as something called the aggregate itself.
The aggregate itself, yes. And to grasp this, we have to look at what the text calls its non-dual position.
Right.
It operates on the premise that we are simultaneously the drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
So, in standard neurological models, consciousness is viewed as an emergent property.
Meaning the brain makes it.
Exactly. The prevailing scientific thought is that consciousness is something your brain generates from scratch through these incredibly complex neural firings.
Yeah.
But this text argues something totally different. It says consciousness is a pre-existing continuity.
Okay, let me make sure I'm tracking the mechanics of this, because non-dual philosophy can get abstract really fast.
Oh, for sure.
If I'm holding a smartphone, right, that device acts as a distinct, localized object in my hand.
Right.
But its entire purpose, its quote-unquote intelligence, relies on the fact that it is a localized node of the entire internet.
I love that analogy.
The phone isn't, generating the internet from scratch. It's merely tapping into it. So is the text suggesting that the signal of the aggregate isn't something we receive from the outside, like some alien transmission, but rather that we fundamentally are the signal?
Yes, exactly.
Just functioning temporarily through a localized biological node.
That is a perfect framework for it. What's fascinating here is that you aren't receiving the signal. You are a temporary, localized expression of the signal itself.
Wow, okay.
So the intelligence that tells your cells how to divide, or your lungs how to exchange oxygen, is the exact same intelligence patterning the rotation of planets.
That's huge.
It is. You are continuous with the cosmic ocean, merely functioning as a drop for just a brief window of time.
Okay, assuming we are this cosmic signal, how does that abstract infinite energy actually interact with physical flesh and blood. I mean, I need to understand the bridge here.
Right, the actual mechanism.
Yeah, the text points directly to the endocrine system, right? The ductless glands as the primary translators.
Yeah, the endocrine glands are basically the body's primary chemical signaling network. They bathe your entire system in these chemical messengers. Exactly. And in the context of this text, their core function is translation. They take higher order signals like neural impulses, subtle energetic shifts, and these vast cosmic frequencies we just talked about, and they translate them into regulatory chemistry.
And that chemistry dictates everything.
Everything, from your metabolism and immune response to your baseline state of consciousness.
So I have to play devil's advocate here on the actual mechanics of that. I mean, I appreciate the poetry of cosmic intelligence, but how does the text envision this physical translation actually happening?
It's a fair question.
Like, how does an abstract philosophical geometry literally dictate something as mundane as how my thyroid processes, a piece of toast?
Well, the author bridges that gap by defining these glands as precise transducers.
Transducers. Okay, break that down.
A transducer is simply a device that converts one form of energy into another. We usually think of this in electrical terms, right?
Yeah.
Like a microphone turning sound waves into electrical currents.
Right.
But here, the text proposes a chemical transduction. The glands do not invent the intelligence. They convert the subtle geometric intelligence of the aggregate into ordered biological commands.
But how does a geometry literally become a chemical? That's the leap I'm struggling with.
Okay, think of it like a cymatic frequency.
Oh, like with the sand and the sound waves.
Exactly. When you play a sound frequency near sand, the sand instantly forms this complex geometric pattern, right?
Yeah, it's wild to watch.
So the text suggests the cosmic signal provides the organizational frequency, and your glands are the physical material that takes on that shape. They release specific proteins and hormones that literally match the geometry of the signal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they take this massive cosmic voltage and step it down into very specific, localized hormonal instructions.
Okay, I'm with you now. And the text actually provides a literal map of these biological transformers running vertically down the body. It refers to it as the Randra-Hardaya Kunda axis.
Yes, that's the central column.
And it charts the pathway of what it calls the descending current. So the entry point for this cosmic signal begins at the top of the axis, right, in the center of the brain with the pineal gland.
Right, the pineal sits near the randra, which the text identifies as the upper gate.
The crown, basically.
Yeah. According to this framework, the pineal receives the descendant white drop, acting as the primary biological gateway for cosmic light.
And when that signal is clear, the text states the pineal governs deep insight and regulates our circadian rhythm, like our literal biological connection to the cycles of the sun.
Right, the macrocosmic cycle.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The fascinating part is what happens when this upper gateway is clogged.
The distortions are intense.
Yeah. The symptoms listed are distorted sleep patterns, which is biological and psychologically spiritual bypassing. I want to dig into the why there. Why does a blocked gland create a psychological phenomenon like spiritual bypassing?
It's because biology and consciousness are responding to the exact same corrupted signal.
Oh, okay.
If the pineal gland, which is the receptor for cosmic truth and literal light, is clouded, the biological result is a loss of circadian rhythm. You literally lose your relationship to day and night.
Your sleep is just wrecked.
Completely. And the psychological result is that the mind still senses an incoming cosmic frequency, but it lacks the clear hardware to process it properly.
So it just makes something up.
Basically, yeah. The ego fabricates a false spiritual reality. It bypasses genuine, grounded realization for this superficial, disconnected fantasy. The biological distortion literally creates the psychological illusion.
Wow. That makes the next step in the cascade even more critical. Because once the signal passes the pineal, the text says it hits the pituitary gland at the base of the brain, the mastal gland.
The commander-in-chief.
Right. If the pineal receives the signal, the pituitary seems to be the entity that actually translates it into actionable commands for the rest of the body.
Exactly. The pituitary acts as the supreme commander of the upper axis. It coordinates the entire downstream endocrine and reproductive system.
So what happens when that gets clogged?
Well, the test argues that if the pituitary becomes clogged or corrupted by static, the result is identity diffusion.
Identity diffusion.
Yeah, a complete loss of directive force in a person's life.
Which biologically makes total sense here. I mean, if identity is the cohesive, coordinated mission of your entire physical form, and the master gland sending out those coordinated marching orders gets scrambled.
Your body forgets what it's doing.
Exactly. Your body literally forgets its overall mission. You lose the plot of who you are chemically and psychologically.
Which then forces us to look at how that overarching command actually becomes physical energy.
Because it needs to manifest physically.
Right. This requires a metabolic translator. As the signal descends further down the axis, we reach the throat, the thyroid and parathyroid glands.
And the text introduces a pretty complex term here. It states the thyroid sits on the mid-upper axis and expresses Madhyama Shabda.
Yes.
It translates this force into our metabolic rate and our communication. But before we look at the symptoms, we really need to demystify Madhyama Shabda.
Okay, so Shabda translates to sound or frequency, and Madhyama means intermediate or middle.
Okay.
So Madhyama Shabda is the intermediate organizing frequency. It is the exact point where an abstract cosmic blueprint begins to take on physical density.
Look at the bridge between thought and action.
Exactly. The thyroid determines the speed and structure at which your body burns fuel to actually manifest your will in the physical world.
So when this intermediate frequency is clear, the text says the result is a healthy metabolic rate, a powerful voice, clear will, and structural integrity.
You're grounded and clear.
But when it's clogged, you see profound communication blocks and hypothyroid issues.
Right, and the pattern the author establishes here is a top-down cascade.
Okay, walk me through that.
This entire upper axis, so the pineal, pituitary, and thyroid, is dedicated exclusively to the reception, translation, and metabolic structuring of a descending cosmic force, this white drop. If the cosmic signal is corrupted at the uppermost gate, it just cascades downward. It distorts your identity, silences your voice, and ultimately deteriorates your physical structural integrity.
But a broadcast is utterly useless without a receiver capable of responding to it.
Exactly. It can't just be a one-way street.
You cannot just have a descending cascade. You need an upward grounding force to meet it. So the text pivots drastically here. It jumps to the very bottom of the axis to define the ascending current.
Yeah, this maps anatomically to the root, which the text calls the kunda. And specifically, it anchors this to the gonads, focusing pretty heavily on the testes and the scrotum.
And we should probably pause here just to examine the text's specific focus on male anatomy for this particular dynamic.
Right, it's very specific.
It explicitly designates the testes as the anchor and emitter of the male signal, identifying them as the source of a rising vital force called the macrocosmic red drop. It asserts that everything defining structural masculinity is a signal emanated upward from this root point. So stripping away any modern sociological debates and just looking impartially at the author's internal biological logic, what is the actual mechanism of this root?
So the text positions the kunda as the heavy anchor of the entire vertical axis. This red drop represents a raw, unrefined, deeply earthly fuel.
Like primal energy.
Yes. When the signal emitting from this root is clear, it provides immense generative power, resilience, and structural masculinity. But when this raw fuel is blocked, or what the text calls leaking laterally, the results are, well, catastrophic.
What kind of symptoms are we talking about?
The text cites compulsion, porn addiction, emasculation, and the expression of raw talic force.
Okay, let's unpack talic force because that term carries a ton of weight in the text.
It does. Talic refers to energy that is dense, heavy, and potentially highly destructive if it's left unintegrated. It is the untamed, volatile power of pure generation and survival.
I picture it kind of like a massive pressurized deep water oil well.
Right. Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
The red drop is this highly combustible raw fuel being pumped up from the depths of the earth. If the pipes are strong, clear, and perfectly aligned, that crude fuel is refined and it powers the entire city above.
Right, it's productive.
But if those pipes are cracked, you experience a catastrophic blowout. The fuel leaks laterally, creating these toxic spills in a person's life.
Which manifests as those deep somatic compulsions and destructive, unintegrated drives.
Exactly. And as this volatile red drop rises from the root, it hits its first major processing center on the lower mid-axis, which is the pancreas.
Right, moving up to the belly. So the pancreas is biologically responsible for regulating sugar metabolism.
Insulin, blood sugar, all that.
Yeah. But in this esoteric mapping, the author expands that to say it regulates a person's relationship to the sweetness of life.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it.
Isn't it? A clear vertical signal through the pancreas translates to stable energy, grounded pleasure, and a really healthy, non-addictive reward system.
But if it's corrupted?
If that raw red drop is corrupted here, It results in severe blood sugar issues and deep-seated addictive patterns.
Which makes perfect sense mechanically. Addiction is essentially a corrupted search for reward when your internal system fails to process the sweetness of life naturally.
Exactly. You look for it externally.
Right. And just above the pancreas, sitting right on top of the kidneys, the rising signal encounters the adrenals.
The stress setters. The adrenals are tasked with processing this ascending red drop into fight-or-flight responses. It's our baseline vital force.
So what happens when that's clear versus clogged?
When the central column is clear, the adrenals provide grounded power, immense resilience, and a clean current of survival energy. But when it's clogged by static, that heavy talic force backs up.
And that causes problems.
Major problems. It manifests as chronic stress, adrenal fatigue, and highly reactive explosive anger.
The contrast between the upper and lower axis is so stark.
Just night and day.
It really is. The upper descending current is all about light, insight, and overarching identity. It's so ethereal. But the lower ascending current is literally the engine room. It's raw generation, the desperation for reward, and pure survival stress.
Yeah, and when the lower axis distorts, it doesn't result in abstract psychological phenomena like identity diffusion.
Right, it's not mental.
No, it results in highly reactive, visceral, physical destruction, addiction, explosive anger, compulsion. The distortions down there are incredibly loud because they involve heavy somatic material.
So we have this cosmic white drop descending like pure geometry from the sky, and we have this microcosmic red drop rising like pressurized raw fuel from the earth.
Moving toward each other.
Yes, moving toward each other along this vertical axis. They are destined to collide.
They have to.
And the text pinpoints exactly where this explosive energetic mixing occurs. It calls it the integration chamber.
Anatomically, this collision happens right in the chest. The text maps this to the Hridaya region, placing intense focus on the thymus gland and the heart.
If we think about like a highly advanced mixing desk in a music studio, you have two massive, totally opposing frequencies coming in, right?
Yeah.
The ethereal descending white drop is blasting on channel 1, and the dense, explosive ascending red drop is peaking on channel 2. The thymus is the exact location where these drops meet and are processed by that concept of Madhyama Shabda, that intermediate organizing frequency we talked about.
That's a great analogy.
It's like the thymus acts as the master producer at the mixing desk, blending these opposing forces to create a unified, harmonic, biological reality.
I mean, the choice of the thymus here is nothing short of brilliant by the author.
Why is that?
Because biologically, the thymus is the training ground for your immune system. It is where your T cells mature and actually learn how to defend your body.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So in the text model, when this integration chamber is perfectly clear, it governs immune intelligence, deep compassion, and this critical mechanism called self-recognition.
Non-self-recognition. That might actually be the most profound concept in this entire excerpt. Let's break down how the biological maps directly to the spiritual here.
Sure. So in hard biology, immunity is literally defined by the body's ability to recognize what is self-like, your own healthy native cells, and what is non-self, which would be an invading virus, bacteria, or a foreign pathogen.
Right. It has to know the difference.
Exactly. The immune system must be aggressive enough to destroy the non-self while protecting the self. The author maps this biological imperative directly to spiritual and emotional boundaries.
Which totally redefines what true compassion actually is. It's compassion without porousness.
Yes, exactly.
Like you can have a completely open heart, you can experience profound empathy for another person's suffering, but you must maintain the strict structural integrity to know exactly where you end and another person begins.
That is exactly it. If the mixing desk is broken, if the Hridaya is clogged by static or trauma, you get weakened physical immunity, obviously.
You get sick.
Right. But psychologically, you suffer from intense emotional reactivity and porous boundaries. You literally lose the ability to distinguish between your own emotional material and the toxic emotional material of the people around you.
You just take on everything like a sponge.
Yes. Or conversely, you become hypersensitive and begin attacking your own healthy tissue, metaphorically in your relationships, or literally as an autoimmune disease.
Man, the breakdown of spiritual boundaries manifests as the breakdown of biological immunity.
That is so wild. So we have the complete map now. We understand the physical hardware, the ductless glands acting as chemical transducers,
Right.
and we understand the dual software, the dense ascending red drop and the ethereal descending white drop.
Yes.
But I guess the ultimate question for you, the listener, is how do you actually apply this theoretical and biological framework to your everyday life? The text distills this into a practice it calls signal hygiene.
Signal hygiene at the level of the central column, yeah. The core premise we established is that the ductless glands do not create the intelligence, right?
They just translate it. Exactly. They are merely loyal executors of whatever signal quality reaches them. If they receive a clean, integrated input from the meeting of the two drops, the endocrine system patterns the body in perfect alignment with Rita.
And Rita being the ancient concept of natural cosmic order and truth.
Right. Which means health, harmony, and flawless biological function.
But if they don't get a clean signal?
If the central column is receiving static, or what the author repeatedly refers to as lateral leakage, the body has no choice but to pattern itself according to that distortion.
Because it can't tell the difference.
The glands do not have the ability to filter out bad data. They just blindly execute the corrupted code, and that results in chronic illness, metabolic issues, or severe emotional chaos.
So let's bring this right down to your daily experience. If you are experiencing severe burnout, if you're constantly fighting addictive drives, or if you're plagued by relentless brain fog or chronic survival stress.
Yeah, all the modern symptoms.
Right. This entire model suggests you need a radically different approach to your well-being. It suggests you shouldn't just look at the tired adrenal gland, or the struggling pancreas, or the sleep-deprived brain in isolation.
You have to look at the whole system.
You have to step back and ask, what external static is corrupting the signal being sent to that organ? What lateral leakage like toxic environments, destructive habits, or unresolved trauma is forcing my physical hardware to download and run corrupted software?
It really demands a fundamental shift in how we define wellness. Maintaining health isn't just about finding the perfect macronutrient diet or the optimal exercise routine.
Though those inputs do matter, right?
Of course, physical inputs matter. But in this esoteric view, health is fundamentally about maintaining the absolute purity of your vertical axis.
Clearing the static.
Yes, it's about aggressively clearing the static from your life so your physical glands can flawlessly execute the pre-existing cosmic intelligence of the aggregate itself.
Well, it has been a truly mind-bending journey exploring this text today.
It really is a lot to process.
It is. We started with this profound philosophical realization that we are the ocean temporarily manifesting as a localized drop.
Right.
Then we mapped the literal anatomy of how our endocrine glands act as chemical translators of that cosmic geometry, stepping it down into the physical reality of our hormones.
Yep, the biological transducers.
And finally, we explored the absolute necessity of signal hygiene to prevent our biological hardware from executing distorted, destructive code.
It ultimately places a massive amount of responsibility on the individual, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you are the continuous signal and your physical body is the transducer, you are ultimately responsible for the clarity of the broadcast you are putting out into the world and the frequency you're allowing to tune your own biology.
Which leaves us with a final lingering thought for you to ponder long after this deep dive ends. If your glands are essentially biological hardware, dutifully executing whatever frequency they receive, what if your sudden intrusive thoughts, your inexplicable waves of anxiety, or even your chronic states of stress aren't things you are actively personally creating? What if they are merely corrupted software updates your body is being forced to download from a noisy, chaotic environment? If your body truly is an antenna, could true wellness simply be a matter of changing the frequency of the room you're sitting in and tuning your dial permanently away from the static?
That is a fascinating question to leave on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of cosmic intelligence. Keep your antennas up, keep your signals clean, and we will catch you next time. Imagine you're deep in meditation, but not just like a standard Tuesday morning session. You're meditating while under the influence of LSD.
Okay, setting the scene here.
Right. So suddenly your perception completely shifts. You look inward and the familiar biological reality, the skin, bones, blood, it totally vanishes.
Wow.
Yeah, and in its place, you perceive your body as a literal functioning solar system. Like, you can actually see planets rotating, you feel these distinct gravitational pulls, and you know with absolute certainty exactly which of your internal organs corresponds to which planet in this weird internal cosmic map.
I mean, that sounds exactly like the peak of classic psychedelic imagery. Most people would just write that off as a totally random hallucination, right? Just a brain saturated in chemicals.
Exactly. But what if that vision was actually a perfectly accurate blueprint of human anatomy?
Now, that is a wild premise.
It is, and that is our mission for this deep dive. We are exploring a really highly unusual set of notes from a text titled 5, The Endocrine Solar System, transducing the subtle signal.
Right, the source material.
Yeah, and we have a caller from this material who reported this exact LSD vision. So our goal today is to figure out how this seemingly wild trip maps onto this highly complex, radically different framework of the human body.
Well, to frame this properly, we really have to recognize that this material proposes a massive paradigm shift, specifically regarding the endocrine system.
Which is usually just about hormones, right?
Right. In standard biological models, we view the endocrine glands, the thyroid, the adrenals, the pituitary, as independent biochemical factories.
They just make the stuff on site.
Exactly. They manufacture hormones, they dump them into the bloodstream, and that is basically the end of the story. But this framework moves us entirely away from that mechanistic view. It positions the endocrine glands as a system governed by geometric and resonant principles.
Driven by this invisible, subtle architecture.
Precisely.
So for you listening right now, if you have ever sat in a doctor's office feeling absolutely exhausted or dealing with wild mood swings or, inexplicable physical symptoms.
And the doctor just runs your blood work and says everything is normal.
Yes. They tell you there is no medical reason for how you're feeling. Well, this deep dive offers a revolutionary alternative explanation. Because if the glands aren't just independent factories, but are instead a part of this massive resonant solar system, the problem might not actually be with the factory itself.
Right. The problem might be with the gravitational field that the factory is sitting inside of.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay.
Because if a standard biology textbook says the gland is a factory making its own goods on site, we kind of need a new way to visualize this alternative model.
We do.
Based on the notes, the premise here is that the gland functions more like a Wi-Fi router.
The transducer.
Yeah, exactly, a transducer. If you look at the router in your living room, that plastic box isn't generating the internet internally. It pulls down an invisible, non-physical signal from the air-like radio waves, and it translates that invisible frequency into a physical output.
Like rendering a web page on your phone screen.
Right. What's fascinating here is how perfectly that modern technology analogy maps onto the ancient terminology used in the source material.
It really does. Because the gland is the physical plastic box. But the Wi-Fi signal in this framework is the subtle body.
The chakras and all that?
Yeah, we're talking about the central channel, the vertical axis of the human form, and the chakras. This subtle body is what actually carries the vibrational and informational patterns.
Okay, let's define those patterns because the terminology gets really dense quickly.
It does. So the primary organizing force is called Matama Shabda. We can understand this as a highly structured geometric vibration.
Geometric vibration, how should we visualize that?
Well, a good way to picture this is through the science of cymatics. If you place sand on a metal plate and run a sound frequency through the plate, the invisible sound waves force the sand to arrange itself into these incredibly complex, perfectly geometric mandalas.
Oh, I've seen videos of that. It's wild.
Yeah. So Madhyama Shabda is essentially that sound frequency.
And the sand in that analogy would be the physical, biological tissue of our bodies.
Precisely. And alongside that geometric vibration, we have the meeting of the red and white drops.
Right, the drops. What are those exactly?
These are fundamental subtle energies. The red drop is this ascending, raw, vital generative force coming from the base of the body.
I'm moving up.
Yep. And the white drop is the descending, structural, cooling, and insightful energy coming from the crown.
So they meet in the middle.
Exactly. The interplay of these drops, riding on the vibration of Madhyama Shabda, forms the true signal.
I need to pause you there because anytime we talk about signals in the body, we're usually talking about neurotransmitters firing across synapses or hormones traveling through blood vessels.
Biological highways.
Right. But this framework insists these signals don't use those highways at all.
They do not. These patterns move through nadis, which are subtle energetic channels.
Completely non-physical.
Right. They move as pure informational charge. They are totally separate from the physical pathways of veins and nerves.
So the signal is just hovering, like moving through this invisible parallel highway system inside us. I have to say, I'm struggling to see how an invisible energetic charge actually forces a physical piece of tissue to change its behavior.
And this is where we have to look at the major nerve plexuses and the ductless endocrine glands. The gland essentially acts as the resonant receiver.
The Wi-Fi box.
Exactly. It's where the subtle highway intersects with the dense physical body. If the subtle signal coming through the nadis is clear and geometrically ordered, if that somatic frequency is perfect, the gland receives a clean, coherent instruction.
And then what?
It translates that invisible geometry into chemistry. It releases the exact appropriate hormones in the perfect rhythm.
But if the Wi-Fi signal is buffering or corrupted in some way,
Then the physical gland receives corrupted instructions. The text calls this a distorted signal, or one that is leaking laterally.
leaking laterally. Okay.
When that happens, your hormonal output becomes entirely dysregulated. The subtle body carries the architectural pattern, right? And the endocrine glands translate that pattern into physical chemistry.
And that chemistry then dictates the organization of your physical health and your behavior.
Exactly.
Which brings us right back to you, the listener, with those inexplicable health issues. The actual tissue of your thyroid or your adrenals might be perfectly healthy under a microscope.
The router itself isn't broken.
Right, the plastic box is fine. It's simply transducing a terrible signal.
The defect is upstream in the subtle signal, entirely bypassing the physical tissue's integrity.
Let me push back on the mechanics of this, though, because it's one thing to say a gland receives a signal like a router. I mean, a router is manufactured specifically to read radio waves. It has an antenna.
Fair point.
How does the actual biological meat of the human body read a subtle vibration? We need the actual physics, or metaphysics, I guess, of how an invisible vibration forces a dense physical gland to squeeze out a chemical hormone.
Well, the material actually breaks down this mechanism into a really precise 5-step process.
Okay, let's hear it.
Step 1 involves the aggregate signal. The text refers to this as the ocean in the drop. This is the totality of your subtle energetic state moving through your central channel as that structured vibration, Madhyama Shabda.
So step 1 is basically just the energetic baseline moving down the central axis of the spine.
Correct. Then step 2. At each major chakra where a gland sits, this moving vibration generates a localized resonant field.
What does that mean in practical terms?
Think of it like a sustained hum of energy, localized precisely where the physical gland resides.
Oh, like striking a tuning fork and feeling the physical air buzzing around the metal.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Uh-huh.
Now, step 3 is the linchpin of the whole thing. It's entrainment.
Entrainment?
Right. The endocrine gland is a dense physical structure, sure, but because it is embedded directly inside that buzzing resonant field, the cells of the tissue begin to enplane to the vibration. They sync up with the rhythm and frequency of that specific field.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm grasping entrainment in a biological sense. Like, in physics, if you mount several pendulum clocks on a shared wall, the tiny vibrations traveling through the wood will eventually force all the pendulums to swing in the exact same rhythm.
Yes, the weaker force conforms to the dominant frequency.
So are we saying the actual biological cells conform to the energetic frequency?
That is the exact mechanism. The physical cellular rhythm of the gland tissue literally submits to the rhythm dictated by the subtle vibration.
Wow.
Which brings us to step 4. This physical entrainment acts as the biological instruction manual.
Meaning what?
Meaning the specific frequency of that entrainment codes the gland. It dictates exactly which hormones to synthesize, the volume to release, and the pulsatile rhythm of that release.
So the vibration forces the tissue to move, and the nature of that movement is the actual code for the chemistry.
Exactly, which leads to step 5. The hormones are released into the bloodstream, carrying that translated instruction throughout the physical body.
And the entire biological system is patterned based on the quality of that original invisible subtle signal.
Yes.
And this reveals why the caller's LSD vision of the solar system wasn't a hallucination at all. They were directly perceiving this macrocosm correspondence in real time.
They were basically watching entrainment happen.
Without the usual mental overlay, they were witnessing the literal physics of their subtle anatomy.
Yeah. In this internal solar system, the central axis, the spine, and the central channel acts as the sun.
And the organs and the major endocrine glands are the planets.
Right. And they are held in their functional orbits and their specific gravitational fields by the quality of the signal moving through that central sun. The text actually references the culpopotri principle here.
Oh, I was hoping we would touch on that. How does a mythical tree fit into this whole solar system model?
Well, the culpopotri represents a vertical axis that possesses differentiated centers of intelligence, yet remains totally unified by the whole.
Break that down for me.
Think of a massive tree. You have the roots, the trunk, the branches, the leaves. They all serve entirely different functions, right? They are highly differentiated.
Sure.
But they are completely unified by the sap running up the center.
Yeah.
Your glands do very different things, just like the leaves and roots, but they are orchestrated by that central axis.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the framework doesn't just leave this as some abstract theory, it actually maps out these planetary glands.
It gives the mechanics of what happens when the subtle signal is clear versus when it's corrupted.
Yeah, so let's move through this energetic economy, starting from the top down.
Okay, at the top we have the pituitary gland. This maps to the ajna, or the third eye center, and the upper sushumna channel.
The master gland.
But in this model, the pituitary is the master translator. It receives the descending white drop, that's structural cosmic instruction, and converts it into actionable hormonal cascades for the entire lower body.
So when the signal here is clear and the entrainment is perfect, the result is deeply coordinated whole body regulation. You experience a strong directive force, like you know your purpose.
Exactly.
But the framework notes that a distorted signal here doesn't just cause hormonal chaos, it leads to identity fragmentation. How does a disrupted subtle signal fragment a person's actual identity?
Well, think about it. If the master translator is receiving static, the subsequent chemical cascade sent to the rest of the body is totally contradictory.
So the body is confused.
Yes. The physical body receives conflicting instructions about its environment and its structural integrity. And when your biology is in a state of chaotic fluctuation, the mind really struggles to maintain a cohesive sense of self.
Because the physical chemistry and the psychological identity are intimately bound by that same resonant field.
Exactly.
Moving down the central axis, we arrive at the thyroid. This is mapped to the throat chakra, the Vishuddha. And the text links this gland directly to the expression of Madhama Shabda as your communicative will.
Which completely reframes how we view the thyroid, by the way. Standard medicine treats the thyroid purely as the regulator of metabolic fire.
Just how fast you burn energy.
Right. But this framework links your physical metabolic rate directly to your authentic voice and structural truth.
Meaning, if you hold your vertical axis and speak your truth, the cymatic frequency is clear, and the physical thyroid reads that as an instruction to maintain a healthy metabolism.
Yes.
But if you constantly swallow your words or suppress your will,
You are physically clamping down on that subtle channel. You literally alter the resonant field at the throat.
so the entrainment changes.
Right. The thyroid tissue reads that restricted, distorted frequency, and it translates it into a physical instruction.
Oh.
Slow down the metabolism.
Oh, wow. Suppressed will literally manifests as a suppressed metabolic rate. That is a staggering way to view hypothyroidism.
It really is.
Let's look further down at the adrenals. These sit at the metacura, the solar plexus, and their job is to process the raw, ascending red drop.
The framework calls this the thallic or vital force.
We all know the adrenals manage stress hormones like cortisol. But how does this subtle model handle them?
Well, when the thallic force rises cleanly through the central channel, the adrenals entrain to a clear signal. This manifests as grounded power, clean drive, and deep resilience.
You have the energetic capacity to meet challenges without your biology just totally redlining.
Right. But the text specifically warns about this raw vital force leaking laterally.
Lateral leaks, we mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. If that energy bleeds out laterally instead of rising vertically, the resonant field around the adrenals becomes incredibly chaotic.
What does the physical gland do then?
It is essentially forced to read a screaming, distorted signal. The result is chronic fight-or-flight chemistry, reactive anger, and eventually total adrenal burnout.
The tissue is basically fried by the bad frequency.
Exactly. And sitting right in that same energetic neighborhood is the pancreas, mapped around the Manipura and Svadhisthana.
The planet that regulates the chemistry of reward and sweetness.
Yes. A clear signal here gives you stable energy. You experience non-addictive pleasure.
But if the subtle signal is starved or distorted, the psychological mapping here is really fascinating. The framework suggests that blood sugar dysregulation and compulsive reward-seeking happen because the body is deprived of the subtle sweetness of a clear vertical connection.
Yeah, when the system lacks that internal energetic sweetness, It aggressively seeks a physical substitute to compensate
So it drives you to consume physical sugar or chase dopamine hits.
because it is literally trying to artificially recreate the feeling of a clear, subtle signal.
That makes so much sense. Now, just to understand the sheer scale of this overlay, we also have the pineal gland at the crown, receiving that descending white drop to regulate sleep and subtle insight.
And the thymus at the heart chakra, which acts as the integration point for the ascending red and descending white drops.
A clear signal there equals immune intelligence.
Right, and a distorted signal at the heart chakra means that integration fails. The immune system becomes confused and can actually attack the body.
Which leads to autoimmune issues.
Yeah, which this framework views as a manifestation of weak, subtle boundaries and emotional reactivity.
Finally, we have the anchor point, the testes, or the kunda center, mapping to the root. It receives and emits the microcosmic red drop.
The raw generative force.
So a clear signal provides structural, grounded power, but a distorted signal leads to raw, unintegrated force and energetic leakage.
The energy just bleeds out compulsively rather than building up that vertical axis.
So what does this all mean? We have mapped this complex internal cosmos. We understand that glands transduce subtle frequencies into chemistry via entrainment.
Right.
But how does a listener actually apply this knowledge? If someone is dealing with brain fog, erect metabolism, or compulsive behaviors, what is the actionable takeaway if standard medical tests show their physical gland tissue is totally fine?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this material is offering a radical diagnostic lens. Western medicine attempts to force the physical tissue to behave differently, usually through synthetic hormones. But if the Wi-Fi router is receiving a corrupted signal, changing the plastic casing of the router won't fix the internet connection.
The gland will just keep entraining to the bad signal.
Exactly. You have to fix the problem upstream.
The framework provides a specific methodology for this, calling it signal hygiene and the maintenance of verticality.
Yes. Signal hygiene is really the practical application of this entire theory. It is the upstream control system for your entire endocrine orchestra.
And maintaining verticality just means keeping that central channel clear.
Yes.
I want to ground this in reality, though. What does a lateral leak actually look like in daily life? Like, how do we break our own signal hygiene?
Okay, let's say someone insults you, or you experience a sudden stressor. You feel a massive surge of that vital red drop energy rise up from your root.
Oh, like that hot flash of anger.
Exactly. A lateral leak is reacting immediately. It is spewing that raw, energetic charge outward through a screaming match, or suppressing it into passive aggression, or even numbing it by doom scrolling for 3 hours.
Because you're avoiding it.
Right. When you leak that energy laterally, you violently distort the cymatic frequency in your central channel. Your adrenals instantly entrain to that chaos, and they just flood you with cortisol.
So practicing signal hygiene in that moment means holding verticality. It means feeling the massive surge of the red drop, but refusing to leak it outward.
Yes. You hold the tension in the central channel. You allow the energy to rise vertically, meeting the structural white drop, which stabilizes the resonant field.
When you hold that verticality, the clear geometric intelligence flows unobstructed.
And the physical glands entrain to a healthy, stable vibration.
The chemistry naturally balances itself because the blueprint it is reading is mathematically sound.
It requires immense discipline, obviously, but it physically rewires your hormonal output.
It's incredible. The caller on LSD wasn't just observing a pretty anatomical map. Once the mental noise was stripped away, they were directly witnessing this resonant organization.
They saw that the body is not just a bag of isolated biochemical organs floating in the dark.
No, it is a living, resonant solar system where invisible geometry dictates physical chemistry down to the literal cellular level.
It's beautiful.
It completely changes the definition of holistic health. You're managing an energetic economy, ensuring the planets of your body remain in their proper orbits around the sun of your central axis.
This raises an important question to leave you with.
Oh, lay it on us.
If your endocrine glands are like planets, constantly and unavoidably entraining to the subtle frequencies of your central axis, what larger external cosmic vibrations might your entire body solar system be unconsciously entraining to right now without you even realizing it?
Wow, that is something to carefully consider the next time you feel a little out of orbit. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the physical, keep exploring the subtle, and we will catch you next time. So what if the reason you feel, completely exhausted after a 5-minute conversation with a specific coworker has absolutely nothing to do with psychology? Like, what if it's actually about literal geometric energy theft?
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
Because it completely flips how you look at the world. You stop seeing a grumpy person and you start seeing a structural breach.
Right. I mean, think about it for a second. You walk into a room, let's say a really crowded coffee shop, and before anyone even speaks a single word to you, there is this immediate, almost visceral data download.
Yeah, a vibe check, basically.
Exactly. Sometimes you lock eyes with a stranger and you're just inexplicably drawn to them, and not just physically, but energetically, like a magnet. Or on the flip side, you sit down next to someone and within 2 minutes, your internal battery just plummets to 1%.
And we usually just call that getting a bad vibe, right? We just move on with our day.
Yeah, we treat it like a fleeting mood or maybe just, a bit of social anxiety. We write it off as entirely subjective. But today, we're going on a mission to explore what happens if it is not subjective at all. Like, what if that feeling is a literal mechanical transfer of energy? So today's deep dive is into an incredibly dense, fascinating, and frankly, deeply esoteric text.
Very esoteric.
Yeah, it's titled 6, The Logos Body and the Architecture of Universal Signal. And our goal for you today is to unpack this profound model of reality that takes those mundane interactions, feeling drained by a coworker, feeling drawn to a stranger, and connects them to the actual architecture of the cosmos.
It's a huge leap, but it's fascinating.
It really is. The sources we're looking at frame our social lives as a massive, subtle, energetic ritual that you and I are basically unconsciously participating in every single second.
And to really set the stage for this, we have to understand the baseline claim of the source material. We're looking at a text that takes ancient cosmological concepts and insists there are operational mechanical realities right now.
Right, like they aren't metaphors.
Exactly, not metaphors. It actually specifically calls out a group it refers to as Madhyamaka scholars.
I love this part.
Yeah, it's great. These are modern academics who study ancient texts but view concepts like the Purusha, which is the idea of a cosmic man or a conscious universe, as just primitive myths. And the text actually jokes that these scholars epically dab on the ancient wisdom.
Epically dab.
Yeah, treating it as quaint poetry from people who just didn't understand science.
I just love that image so much, like stodgy, tweed-wearing academics epically dabbing on the concept of the cosmos. But, the text is using that modern slang to make a really sharp point, isn't it?
It really is. It's pointing out the arrogance of modern materialism. The text argues that those academics are entirely missing the underlying physics of reality.
Wow.
In this worldview, the esoteric is intensely practical. The macrocosm, the vast architecture of the universe isn't just philosophically mirrored in you. It is literally mirrored in the microscopic reality of your physical body.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can understand how we're interacting with like 50 other people in a crowded grocery store, we have to establish what we actually are, structurally speaking.
Right.
And this requires zooming way, way out. The text claims that the solar system isn't just, rocks and gas. It is literally the body of the Logos, or Ymir.
Yes, Ymir, which comes from Norse cosmology. That's the primordial giant from whose body the world was made.
Ah, okay.
And the Logos is the Greek philosophical concept of the divine ordering principle. So the text is stating that the solar system is a living, organized, conscious body.
And here is the wildest part of the whole text for me. The human body is a microcosmic reflection of that exact cosmic body. Like the source mentions this acid vision experienced by the author.
Right, but it makes a really important distinction there.
Yeah, it explicitly clarifies that this wasn't some random symbolic hallucination. It was a revelation of actual resonant architecture. It argues that at a certain level of perception, the distinction between the macrocosm of outer space and the microcosm of the human body just entirely collapses.
And that collapse is really the foundation of everything we're discussing today. When the text says the distinction collapses, it means the exact same geometric ordering principles that hold the planets of the solar system in synchronized motion.
Wait, literally the planets?
Literally. Those same principles are operating directly through your human ductless glands and your central nervous system.
Hold on, I need to visualize that. How exactly does an endocrine gland like, I don't know, my thyroid or my pituitary mimic a planet? That sounds crazy.
Well, think about what a planet does in a solar system. Jupiter doesn't just sit there, right? Its immense gravitational pull organizes the space around it. It dictates the orbits of moons and asteroid belts. It is a gravitational well.
Okay, I follow that.
So, the text argues that your ductless glands function the exact same way on a biological scale. They act as biological gravity wells. Your thyroid isn't just secreting chemicals, it's acting as a localized planetary center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, organizing the hormonal, metabolic, and energetic state of your entire biological space based on the specific geometric frequencies it's holding.
It's kind of like zooming in on a complex fractal. Like if you zoom all the way out, you see the massive planets orbiting the sun in a perfect geometric dance.
Beautifully said, yeah.
And if you zoom all the way in, past the skin, into a human being, into our endocrine system, our glands, our central channel, you see the exact same structural blueprint. You are essentially a walking solar system.
Precisely. You are a biological expression of cosmic geometry.
But, I mean, that raises a massive mechanical question. If we are basically walking solar systems, what exactly is the energy fueling this internal system? Because planets don't just move on their own. There are massive forces at play. Where does our energy come from if it's all one identical fractal?
And this is where the text moves from structural architecture to the actual mechanics of energy flow. If your physical structure is identical to the solar system, you aren't generating your own isolated energy in a vacuum, you are receiving it. The source states that the signal, which is the energetic and informational lifeblood of your entire system, comes directly from the field itself. And the text refers to this universal field as the aggregate.
And it introduces some deeply esoteric terminology here that I definitely struggled with at first. It talks about the ocean, which it calls the cosmic white drop or dhruva.
Right.
And then it pairs that with the sandworm, which it calls the cosmic red drop or shesha. Like, whoa, hold on, a cosmic sandworm? Are we talking about Dune here, or is this an actual biological mechanism? Because you are going to have to translate that for me.
What's fascinating here is that the text is taking these highly abstract cosmic forces and mapping them directly into your nervous system. The ocean, or the white drop, represents the descending, still organizing principle of the universe. The sandworm, or the red drop, represents the rising, kinetic, manifesting principle.
So they're like opposing forces.
Sort of, yes. And the text is absolutely adamant that these forces are not distant deities sitting on a cloud somewhere. They are the field expressing itself through localized form. Inside your body, these subtle energetic points, the macrocosmic drops, move through your central channel.
Okay, I see.
And the text states explicitly that they are totally continuous with the macrocosmic drops. There is no hard boundary between the energy inside your spine and the energy holding the solar system together.
No hard boundary. That means my central nervous system is literally plugged into the universe's electrical grid.
Is the grid. The text argues that the distinction between you and the ocean is purely functional, not ontological.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning you function as a separate entity, so you can walk around, drive a car, and make a sandwich. But fundamentally, your being is just a localized continuation of the cosmic field. And the specific structuring intelligence of this field, the way it organizes itself into data as it moves through your individual axis, is called Madhyama Shabda.
Madhyama Shabda. Okay, so the structuring intelligence.
Right. If your central axis is clear, if your energetic posture is aligned, you become a clean transducer of this universal signal. The Madhyama Shabda flows through you, and you express the field cleanly into the world.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly highly confrontational to how we usually think about ourselves in the modern world. Wait, so this text is arguing that I don't actually generate my own thoughts or my own personality. I'm literally just a fleshy radio antenna tuning into this Madhyama Shabda.
That is exactly what it is arguing.
But I know I have my own personality. If I'm just a transducer for a universal field, how does this text account for human individuality? Like, why do I have a totally different vibe than you if we are both plugging into the exact same cosmic field?
Because of the unique geometry of the transducer itself. Think of light shining through a stained glass window.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the light, the signal, the field is exactly the same universal energy. But the specific arrangement of the glass, your biology, your experiences, the specific alignment of your ductless glands refracts that light into a totally unique pattern.
So I'm the glass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your individuality isn't a ghost sitting inside your brain generating energy from scratch. Your individuality is the unique, localized shape that the universal signal takes when it moves through your specific physical architecture.
Okay, that makes sense. The shape of the antenna changes the broadcast. So if I am a fleshy radio antenna refracting the cosmic field, that means every single other person walking around on this planet is also an active antenna. Which means we have to move from the quiet, theoretical architecture of the cosmos into the bustling, messy reality of an everyday social environment. What happens when billions of these antennas cross paths?
This is where the text gets incredibly practical. Because if we are antennas, we aren't just broadcasting, we are constantly receiving. The source material states that human beings are fundamentally starving for data. We are seeking signal all day long.
So we literally can't stop scanning the room.
We can't. The text describes this as a ceaseless collective ritual. Every time you look at someone, every time you evaluate someone's attractiveness, you are participating in a continuous ritual of absorbing what the text calls shabda.
And shabda is the data.
Right. Remember, shabda isn't just sound. In this context, it is the literal vibrational and informational data emitting from someone's central channel and hitting your nervous system.
And the text gives this collective unconscious ritual an incredibly grand title, doesn't it? The Great Offering Festival of Manjusri, which is referencing the ancient Manjusri Namasamjiti. For context for our listeners, Manjusri is traditionally the embodiment of transcendent wisdom in Buddhist tradition. He's the figure who wields a flaming sword to cut through delusion and reveal reality as it actually is.
And wielding that sort of discernment here means cutting through our everyday delusions about socialization. We think we're just casually people watching. But the source argues that 4 distinct, highly mechanical things are happening simultaneously in literally every interaction, even a passing glance.
Right, let's break those down. First, you are scanning for signal quality. Like you are unconsciously reading how clear, ordered, or distorted the other person's energetic transmission is.
Second, you are evaluating attractiveness. But Manjusri's sword cuts through our biological delusion here. The text redefines what attractiveness actually is.
It's not just physical.
No, it's not just about facial symmetry or wearing nice clothes. It is a deep, energetic assessment. You are assessing how cleanly the other person's vertical axis is running and how well their red and white drops, those cosmic manifesting and organizing forces, are integrating within their body.
That is wild. Okay, third, you are absorbing their shabda. You are literally taking their vibrational output into your own biological system. Your nervous system is eating their data.
And fourth, you are offering your own signal in return. You're broadcasting your specific configuration back to them.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's ground this. It means when you're at the grocery store and you awkwardly lock eyes with a stranger over a pile of avocados, you aren't just having a moment.
No, definitely not.
That, according to this text, you are unconsciously scanning each other's cosmic Wi-Fi signals to see if the connection is clear or if it's full of malware. You are partaking in the Great Offering Festival of Manjusri right there in the produce aisle. And the crazy thing is, almost nobody realizes they are doing this. We just think, oh, that guy gives me the creeps, or she seems really nice. We brush it off as psychology.
We do. But underneath that psychological narrative, your glands and your central nervous system are engaged in a massive, ongoing, subtle ritual of energy exchange. You are constantly tasting the cosmic field as it's refracted through the people around you.
It's a profound reframe. Every single glance is a data transfer. But, I mean, that leads directly to the danger here. If every glance is a profound exchange of energy and data, and my nervous system is literally eating the shabda of the people around me, there have to be massive risks.
Absolutely.
Not every Wi-Fi network is safe to connect to, right? Some are going to steal your passwords and crash your hard drive.
And this brings us to the most practical takeaway in the source material: the concept of signal hygiene and the very real dangers of distortion. Because if you are constantly absorbing shabda, the quality of that data matters immensely to your own physiological health.
The source outlines this mechanically, too. It says that people with clear axes emit clean, geometrically ordered signals. Those signals stay vertical. But when an axis is clogged or distorted, like from trauma, stress, or bad habits, the signal they emit becomes corrupted.
Yes.
And the text lists some intense causes for this distortion: signal arrest, chronic lateral leakage, or my favorite, death naga entanglement. I have to admit, death naga entanglement sounds exactly like an extreme heavy metal band.
It does sound theatrical, but the mechanism behind it is very real within this framework.
Yeah.
Think of a death naga not as a mythical monster, but like a corrupted code loop in a piece of software.
Okay, a corrupted code loop. Walk me through how that actually works in the body.
Under healthy conditions, your energy moves vertically up and down your spine, keeping you integrated with the field. But if you have a severe distortion, a death naga, that corrupted code, forces your energy to loop sideways. It leaks laterally.
So it's not going up and down anymore.
Exactly. And instead of vitalizing you, it constantly feeds a phantom process until your system crashes.
And that lateral leakage doesn't just disappear into the ether, right? The text says it leaks into what it calls egregores.
Yes. An egregore is essentially a collective thought form or energetic parasite. Let's look at a modern office environment. If 50 stressed out people are constantly leaking anxious, resentful energy laterally, that energy pools together. It forms an egregore, a localized field of stress that hovers over the office and feeds on that specific frequency of anxiety.
That is terrifying, but it explains so much. If you walk into that office, you aren't just dealing with 50 stressed individuals. You are walking into an environment saturated with corrupted, parasitic data. And if your antenna is open, you are absorbing all of it.
Every bit of it.
The text says that if you are absorbing the shabda of someone with a clogged axis, you can get hooked, you can get drained, or your nervous system can literally be fed false metrics.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this explains the exact mechanics behind that visceral experience we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive. Walking into a room and feeling instantly exhausted by someone isn't just that they have an annoying tone of voice, it's that their energetic transmission is heavily distorted. You are literally absorbing corrupted data, and your biological gravity wells your glands are struggling to process the malware.
The text gives a really poignant, almost melancholy example of this. It talks about a person experiencing long, empty days at work where they don't connect to anyone. It specifically phrases it as not connecting to any beautiful girls, but we can easily expand that to mean anyone radiating a clean, attractive, vital signal.
Yeah.
The text argues that this specific feeling of emptiness at the end of a long, isolating day isn't just emotional sadness.
No, it's physiological starvation. The loneliness is literally your nervous system registering a critical lack of high-quality shabda absorption. You are an antenna built to receive and transmit the cosmic field, and when you're placed in a barren environment, your biological system degrades.
Which begs the question, how do we survive this? I mean, we can't all go live in a cave. We have to go to the Tuesday morning staff meeting. We have to ride the subway.
Right, we have lives.
Yeah. If we are forced into environments with terrible signal quality fluorescent lights, angry commuters, lateral leakage everywhere, how do we stop our own axis from getting completely clogged with malware?
That is the ultimate pivot of the text. It insists that signal hygiene is not just a luxury. It's not something you do for 20 minutes on a meditation cushion and then forget about. Meditation is great, but it's isolated.
Yeah.
True signal hygiene is a critical moment-to-moment maintenance routine that is absolutely required in the exact middle of ordinary, chaotic human contact.
Because you can't opt out of the Great Offering Festival.
Precisely. You have to learn how to maintain the verticality of your own axis. When you feel someone's distorted signal trying to hook you, you have to consciously recognize it as corrupted data, realign your posture, and focus on drawing clean signal from the macrocosm rather than getting entangled in their lateral loop.
It's active defense.
Ooh.
Okay, let's take a breath and synthesize this incredible journey we've just been on through these sources. We started all the way out in the vast architecture of the solar system, establishing that the cosmos is a living, organized body.
We then zoomed in to see that exact same geometric architecture reflected perfectly in our own endocrine glands. We understood that the macrocosm and the microcosm operate on the exact same physics.
From there, we mapped the flow of the cosmic field, the descending white drop and the rising red drop moving right through our central channels. We realized we aren't isolated egos generating our own energy from scratch. We are fleshy antennas, unique stained glass windows refracting the universal signal.
And finally, we brought it down to earth, understanding our mundane daily interactions as the Great Offering Festival. Every look, every judgment, every attraction is a ceaseless ritual of scanning, absorbing, and exchanging energetic data, which makes active signal hygiene an absolute daily necessity.
So for you listening right now, this text leaves us with some incredibly practical and frankly challenging questions for your daily life. How do you maintain your vertical axis when the street or the office is full of corrupted, draining signals? What shifts in your reality when you stop just unconsciously leaking energy or blindly absorbing whatever garbage is around you?
It changes everything.
What happens when you deliberately offer a clean, ordered signal into the room? The next time you walk into that crowded coffee shop, you aren't just a passive observer anymore. You are an active, conscious participant in the cosmic grid.
This raises an important question, though. A final thought to leave you with, which builds on everything we've just uncovered. We've established that our physical presence, our biological glands, and even our eye contact constitute a profound energetic offering.
Yeah.
The entire mechanism relies on the biological physical body acting as a geometric reflection of the solar system. But look at the world today. What happens to this universal signal exchange when our interactions become entirely mediated by screens?
Yeah, when we aren't physically in the same room at all.
Exactly. When we are interacting through text messages, video calls, and digital avatars, are we still transmitting our Majama Shabda through the fiber optic cables of the internet?
Mm.
Can a flat screen transmit the cosmic red and white drops to your nervous system? Or, by moving our social lives into a purely digital, disembodied realm, are we structurally cutting our antennas off from the cosmic field? Are we logging on every single day to participate in a great offering festival with ghosts?
That is a haunting thought. Walking into a physical coffee shop and navigating the messy, beautiful shabda of living human beings is one thing. Logging into a chat room and trying to find the cosmic architecture of the solar system in a wall of text, well, that's a whole different kind of festival. Something to think about next time you feel your battery drain and you realize you're the only physical body in the room.
Think about the last time you locked eyes with a stranger on the subway.
Yeah, that classic awkward moment.
Right. You probably held the gaze for like a fraction of a second and then immediately looked down at your phone and you just chalk it up to awkward primate biology, you know?
Absolutely.
Or maybe you're people watching at a coffee shop, sizing someone up, deciding in an instant if you like their vibe. We just treat these fleeting moments as entirely mundane.
Oh,
Less
completely.
evolutionary hardware firing off, looking for a mate, or maybe assessing a threat.
And, well, it's incredibly comforting to categorize our lives that way.
Yeah, it really is.
Framing our interactions as self-contained, purely individual, and, mostly meaningless biological responses, it keeps the world feeling manageable and measurable, too.
But then you step into the deep end of esoteric cosmology, and that safe, manageable framework completely shatters.
It really does.
Because what if I told you that split-second glance on the train isn't biology at all?
Yeah.
What if it is actually this profound cosmic transaction occurring within a macrocosmic nervous system?
Which is just a massive paradigm shift. I mean, you are taking the smallest, most forgettable human moment and stretching its implications across the entire universe.
Exactly. And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are looking at excerpts from this fascinating, incredibly dense document titled 7, The Great Offering Festival, The Aggregate in Motion.
It's quite a title.
It is, and our goal here is to unpack this esoteric text and translate its high-level cosmological concepts into a completely new lens for how you, listening right now, experience every single human interaction.
And I have to say, the author of this text does not pull any punches.
No, I don't.
Like, right in the opening paragraphs, there is this massive, uncompromising claim. They state that human social behavior is not a metaphor for cosmic processes. It literally is what the text calls the aggregate in motion.
Okay, let me stop you there because I want to hit pause on that. The text says that when we are out in the world, simply looking at one another, we are seeking signal. And that sounds to me like a telecom term, not a spiritual one. What are we actually seeking when we do that?
Well, the framework argues that we are absorbing something called shabda from the people around us.
Shabda.
Yes, shabda. In various esoteric and Vedic traditions, shabda refers to a primordial sound. But we aren't talking about sound waves you hear with your physical ears.
So it's not like auditory?
No, not at all. It is a subtle, foundational, energetic vibration. So when you are evaluating that stranger at the coffee shop, you aren't just processing visual data like their clothes or their posture.
Right.
You're actually participating in the field knowing itself through differentiation.
Okay, I am going to need to hit pause again because
Yeah.
the field knowing itself through differentiation is like a really heavy academic phrase.
It is a mouthful, yeah.
Let's try to ground this. Because to understand what this macro field is doing, I need to know what I am in this scenario.
That makes sense.
The source text dives straight into the mechanics of the human body, right? And it labels every human axis a localized transducer. Now, I know a transducer is just a device that converts one form of energy into another.
Right, like a microphone.
Exactly, like how a microphone turns acoustic sound into electrical energy. But in this esoteric framework, what am I converting?
So to answer that, the text relies on specific internal mechanics that are borrowed from esoteric, yogic, and tantric traditions.
Okay.
It describes this continuous cycle where the red drop rises through one body while the white drop descends through another.
Wait, let's unpack those terms, red drop and white drop. Why are we using colors and what are they actually doing?
So in certain tantric architectures, the red drop is often associated with the solar, somatic, and feminine energy residing near the navel.
Like the gut area.
Yeah, exactly. It is the rising heat of physical existence.
Okay, got it.
And then the white drop is lunar, cerebral, masculine energy that resides at the crown of the head, and it moves downwards.
Oh, I see. So it's a polarity thing.
Precisely. The text uses these polarities to describe a dynamic circuit. When two human axes two transducers come into proximity, one's rising energy and another's descending energy create an invisible friction.
Invisible friction.
Right, and in the space between those two bodies, Shabda is offered and received. You are basically converting cosmic potential into a localized experiential signal.
Wow, okay. So if I am at a crowded networking event, right? Handing out business cards, making small talk about the weather or whatever, I am basically a biological radio tower. I am transmitting my internal frequency and receiving the Shabda from the person across from me. And this is happening totally invisibly, right in the empty space between our coffee cups.
That is exactly it. And the most crucial detail the author stresses here is that this exchange requires absolutely no conscious effort on your part.
Really? None?
None at all. You do not have to be meditating or, performing some intricate ritual. You can literally just be standing in line at the grocery store, completely zoned out, and your transducer is still broadcasting and receiving.
It's just always running in the background.
Exactly. The text says the festival is always in motion.
Man, that reframes everything. What feels to me like the most mundane, forgettable small talk is actually this microcosmic ritual of offering and recognition.
Beautifully put. Yeah.
But, that raises a massive logistical question for me.
Let's hear it.
If I am a localized radio tower, exchanging signals with everyone I pass who is broadcasting the original signal. Like if I'm tuning into a frequency, where on earth is it coming from?
Well, this is where the text introduces the cosmological layer, which directly attacks our core assumption of individuality.
Okay, how so?
The text insists that at the ultimate level of the aggregate, there's actually no separation between me and you.
The source material uses an ocean metaphor here, right?
It does, yes.
It argues that there's only the ocean, which expresses itself temporarily as countless individual drops. And every single drop, meaning you, me, the barista, the guy on the subway, we all carry a fragment of that total overarching signal.
Which is a beautiful image, and it forces us to completely redefine our whole concept of attraction.
I love this part, actually, because it totally flips our everyday experience on its head.
It really does. Think about what actually happens when two of these separate drops come into proximity.
Right, because when I think someone is attractive, or even if I just feel like, oh, someone has a great vibe.
Yeah, that's spark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I usually assume it's just physical symmetry, or maybe they have a charismatic personality.
Which is the biological cover story.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the text argues that physical appraisal is basically just that, a cover story for a much deeper evaluation. We are subconsciously evaluating the degree to which the other person is running a clean, ordered, and potent signal.
Exactly. You are looking way past the aesthetic surface. Your localized transducer is reading their energetic transmission to see if their vertical axis is unobstructed.
So it's like my internal Wi-Fi device is scanning a crowded room.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, like my phone is constantly looking for a network. And suddenly it detects a router that has this completely uncorrupted, perfectly clear high-speed connection.
Right, full bars.
Full bars. When I feel drawn to someone across the room, it's not just chemistry. It's my drop of the ocean, recognizing another pristine drop. I'm basically doing a subconscious packet loss check on their soul.
That is fantastic. The Wi-Fi analogy captures the mechanics so perfectly. The text literally describes this moment of absorption as the field pasting its own expression through another localized form.
Pasting its own expression. Wow.
It helps explain the sheer intensity of human connection. When you feel a profound spark with someone, it is literally the ocean recognizing itself across the illusory boundary of separate bodies.
It makes perfect sense when you frame it like that.
Yeah.
But the author doesn't just leave it as a poetic observation.
No, we don't.
They invoke some surprisingly violent imagery to drive the point home, specifically Manjushri's sword. Now, I know Manjushri is a Buddhist figure, but a flaming sword seems pretty intense for a theory about, like, coffee shop vibes.
It does seem extreme at first glance, but in Buddhist iconography, Manjushri is the bodhisattva of transcendent wisdom.
Okay.
The flaming sword he wields isn't meant for physical violence. It is a tool specifically designed to cut through ignorance and delusion.
I see. So the text uses the sword metaphorically to slash through the ego's narrative.
Precisely.
It cuts away the delusion that our interactions are merely personal. It destroys that whole thought process of, I am the main character of this cafe and I am choosing to flirt with this person.
Exactly. The sword severs that mundane cover story. It forces you to realize that everyday social or sexual appraisal is actually the continuous self-offering of the aggregate.
So it's a divine process.
Yes. It is a divine cosmic process masquerading as a mundane primate behavior.
Okay, I am tracking with this on a micro level. The space between two people exchanging shabda, the Wi-Fi routers, I get that.
Good.
But then the source material scales this concept up to a size that I, frankly, struggle to wrap my head around.
Gets huge.
It really does. It introduces this acid vision of the body as a solar system. Help me out here, because this sounds like a massive leap.
It is a massive leap in scale, without a doubt, but the logic actually holds within the framework.
Okay, break it down for me.
The text posits that the entire solar system itself operates as a single resonant body. It refers to the celestial body as the physical expression of the logos, or Ymir.
Right, let's define those terms for context for the listener. Ymir is the primeval giant from Norse mythology, right?
Yes, exactly.
The being whose flesh and bones were literally torn apart by the gods to build the physical earth and sky.
That's the one.
And then logos comes from ancient Greek philosophy, representing the divine reason, the mathematical order, or like the mind of the cosmos.
Right.
So the text is fusing the Norse idea of a literal fleshy cosmic body with the Greek idea of a supreme ordered intelligence.
And that synthesis is the absolute key here. The solar system isn't just a collection of dead rocks orbiting a burning star.
Right.
It is a unified living organism. It is a macrocosmic nervous system.
Okay. And if the solar system is the macrocosmic body, what does that make us?
Well, we are the microcomponents. We are running the vertical signal chains inside that much larger entity.
So let's translate that for the listener right now.
Sure.
You aren't just existing on a planet. In this acid vision, you are a firing neuron within the nervous system of the solar system itself.
Exactly.
Great Offering Festival. All of these millions of daily human interactions, those fleeting glances, the conversations, it is simply the mechanism by which these tiny axes communicate with one another to keep the larger cosmic body functioning.
That's it perfectly.
Every time you evaluate someone's energy, it is a literal transaction of data across the solar system's network.
It is wild, isn't it? It connects the most intensely private, localized experience you can possibly have directly to the celestial sphere.
It really does.
You are transmitting cosmic data just by, walking down a busy street.
Which sounds incredibly majestic. I mean, it makes life sound like this beautiful, unbroken symphony of divine connection.
It's a very romantic way to look at it.
But let's get real for a second.
Okay.
If we are all just flawless drops of the ocean, exchanging the pristine signal of the universe,
Yeah.
why do so many of my social interactions feel terrible?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why can I walk into a specific room or talk to a specific person and leave feeling just exhausted, toxic, or completely drained?
Well, the author anticipates that exact counter-argument. Because you're right, we all experience that.
Yeah.
The system itself is flawless, but the hardware running it is not. The issue lies entirely in the condition of the human transducers.
Oh, okay.
The text draws a very sharp contrast between clear axes and clogged or distorted ones.
Okay, keeping with our tech analogy then. If an individual's axis is clear, they're broadcasting a strong, uncorrupted Wi-Fi signal.
Exactly.
They transmit geometrically ordered information.
But as we know, human beings accumulate things. We hold on to trauma, chronic stress, egoic attachments, physical ailments.
We get messy.
Very messy. And over time, our localized transducers become clogged. And the text introduces a striking diagnostic phrase for this. It warns about what happens when countless human axes start heavily leaking laterally into egregores.
Okay, we need to define egregore because that is a really vital concept here.
It is crucial, yeah.
In occult and esoteric studies, an egregore is an autonomous energy field, or like a thought form, created by a collective group of people.
Yes.
It's like the distinct suffocating vibe of a toxic corporation, or the frantic mob mentality of a riot, or even the addictive outrage loop of a specific social media algorithm, you know?
That's a great modern example.
It's a collective psychic entity.
Right. And when a transducer is clogged, it can no longer maintain its clean vertical connection to that macrocosmic nervous system.
Because of the stress and trauma.
Exactly. Instead, the signal leaks out sideways. It bleeds into these collective egregores.
So the bandwidth is basically being hijacked.
Yes, hijacked is the perfect word. The field is still trying to offer itself. The ocean is still trying to flow through the individual, but the data is being completely corrupted by the bad hardware.
Wow. So the original signal is pure,
Yeah.
but it is passing through intense network congestion and, like, malware.
Right. And what gets broadcast out into the room from that person is noisy, addictive, or even parasitic.
Man, this explains so much about modern life.
Doesn't it?
If I walk into a highly stressed, hyper-competitive office environment, I'm not just dealing with my coworkers' bad moods.
No, you're not.
According to this framework, I am walking into a dense field of clogged transducers. They're all leaking their bandwidths laterally into this toxic corporate egregore.
Exactly.
And my own transducer is absorbing that corrupted parasitic static just by sitting in a chair in that room.
Which brings us to arguably the most practical, actionable advice in the entire document.
Okay, I need this.
Because the festival never stops, right? You are constantly absorbing Shabda, whether it is pure or heavily distorted.
Right.
If you are taking in parasitic static from the clogged axes around you, that interference infects your own vertical chain. This is why the text mandates the practice of signal hygiene.
Signal hygiene. I absolutely love that term.
It's very evocative.
It really is. It's like clearing your browser cache or defragging your hard drive.
It is non-negotiable maintenance. When you leave that toxic environment, you have to actively purge the static.
So deciding to take a quiet walk in the woods or meditating or, I don't know, putting your phone in another room for the evening,
All great examples.
that isn't just trendy self-care. In this framework, it is vital operational maintenance of a cosmic communication device.
Yes.
If I don't practice signal hygiene, my own access gets clogged, and I just become another rogue router leaking parasitic static onto everyone I meet.
The continuous exchange is always happening no matter what. The only variable you actually control is the clarity of your own access.
Wow. This really makes me wonder about the author's ultimate goal, though. Well, why go through all the trouble of framing reality this way? The text actually takes a detour to aggressively critique traditional academics and scholars, specifically regarding the concept of Purusha.
Yes. The critique of academia is central to the author's whole point.
Right.
Because in ancient Indian philosophy, Purusha is frequently translated as the cosmic man, the true self, or, pure passive consciousness.
Okay.
But the text argues that modern scholars treat Purusha as a dead philosophical artifact.
They treat it like a dusty museum exhibit, like an abstract noun that you write a doctoral thesis on, but that has absolutely zero bearing on how you actually live your life.
Exactly. The author is trying to rescue Purusha from the textbooks. The text redefines Purusha as the living, breathing mechanics of reality itself.
Okay.
It insists that Purusha is the aggregate. It is the active force that sees, the one who offers the Shabda, and the one who receives it through all these localized forms.
So it takes a noun and turns it into an action verb.
Yes.
So the Great Offering Festival, this constant, invisible exchange of Wi-Fi signals between humans, is literally Purusha looking at itself through billions of different eyes.
That's it.
It is the universe actively evaluating the clarity of its own signal as it moves through our human hardware.
It is the ongoing, living respiration of the cosmos. You are the universe experiencing itself, but the text grounds that poetic idea in a deeply operational reality.
Right, because it's not just a nice thought.
No, you are the universe experiencing itself through a localized transducer that requires constant daily hygiene.
That is such a powerful synthesis. And really, it brings us to the ultimate takeaway for the listener today.
It really ties it all together.
Yeah. The next time you step out your front door, walk into a coffee shop or get on the subway, try to drop the illusion of the mundane.
Just for a moment.
Yeah. You aren't just navigating a random crowd of isolated primates. You are a localized transducer. Your everyday glances, your casual feelings of attraction or repulsion, they are the ocean recognizing itself.
Beautifully said.
It is Purusha, looking through billions of eyes, firing neurons across a macrocosmic nervous system. So, keep your vertical axis clear, avoid leaking your bandwidth into parasitic egregores, and please take your signal hygiene seriously.
But, the text insists that this festival is continuous, right? Happening whether you are conscious of it or not, driven by the field, knowing itself through differentiation. But that absolute rule leaves us with a rather profound, lingering question.
Oh, what's that?
If the entire process relies on 2 drops coming into proximity, exchanging the red and white drops in the space between them, what happens when that proximity disappears entirely?
Oh, wow.
Think about what happens when you are completely alone, isolated in a pitch-dark room, or fast asleep in an empty house.
Okay.
If there are no other drops of the ocean to observe, no other transducers to receive your shabda, does your localized axis still broadcast into the void?
That is haunting.
Is the macrocosmic nervous system still evaluating itself through your isolated, dreaming mind? Or do you temporarily dissolve back into the ocean until the next stranger walks by?
Man, something to ponder the next time you find yourself entirely alone in the quiet. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, maintain your signal, and we'll catch you on the next one.